All right, good morning, everyone. I'm going to call the Board of Water Wastewater Commissioners meeting at the conference room of the Harwich Water Department at 196 Chatham Road, Harwich, Mass. For Thursday, June 24th, 2021 at 8:30 a.m. to order. The first consent agenda is the June 9th minutes. They aren't ready yet, so we'll put that on for our next meeting. There are no abatements, and we'll move on to old unfinished business. Actually, we have people here today to give a presentation. So if it's the board's pleasure, I'd like to put that back and have Russ and Tom give their presentations. So they don't have to sit through Dan's evaluation of sewer rates, if that's all right with everybody. Okay?
Yeah.
All right, so first we have the Route 28 water main replacement design. Russ is here from GHD. And go ahead.
Sure. Thank you. Good morning. For the record, my name is Russ Kleekamp, engineer with GHD. I believe in front of you, you have Exhibit A for an agreement that GHD sent over to the town of Harwich to go over the scope of work for the design of the Route 28 water main replacement. So I'll just go through the proposal that we sent and talk about the things that we're designing for and just go down some of the scope items. I'll go fairly quickly, so if there's any questions, please stop me and ask. So this design, Dan contacted us, made us aware that there was an existing 10-inch cast iron water main within Route 28. Subsequently, Route 28 is also planning a future paving project, so obviously we want to get this utility replaced before the paving project, and also if we can save any money with Route 20 with Mass DOT doing the paving, we're going to try to work with them to capture any cost savings as well, because it's a fairly straightforward project, but it's 2.4 miles of water main on Route 28, so it does add up. You're going to be in the millions of dollars for construction cost. So what our design is considering, there's an existing 10-inch cast iron. We want to put the new water main back in the same trench where the existing water main is, so in order to do that, we'll have to do above grade bypass piping. It's fairly common. You've probably seen it in towns before. It's either a 4 or 6-inch line. They bury it under the driveways. You have temporary hydrants. So once we get that above grade water line established, then we can start the construction, remove the old cast iron, and then we know since it was put there at one time, it should hopefully be a fairly clean installation to put the new ductile iron main back in its place. So as part of the design, we are going to run stubs up all the side streets. We're going to try to get the stubs off just outside of the state layout. So at a future date, the town or an outside contractor can come back and upgrade lines as needed, but they won't have to go back into the DOT, the state layout. And then obviously we'll coordinate with Mass DOT. There's going to have to be road opening permits. We did all the sewer design work in Route 28 in Chatham, so we're familiar with working with Mass DOT. And one of the items that we're going to try to not have to do with DOT is using the control density fill. A lot of the times the state requires you to use control density fill, which is a low strength concrete to minimize settling after the fact. Given this is such a long stretch in Route 28 and because they are going to repave it, that's going to be one of our first points of communication with DOT is to see if we can just do traditional backfill and compaction, which we did do in Chatham for a lot of the gravity sewers out there. Just running down our scope of work, it's fairly, again, it's a water main design, so it's a fairly routine engineering assignment. It's just, again, a very large length. The first task is a survey. The surveyors that we use, JC Engineering, they are actually contracted by Mass DOT. They do survey with DOT, so they are familiar with the standards that they need to use, which is one of the reasons why we like to use them. They also give very aggressive pricing, and they're very responsive. Any issues, they'll go back out and survey with no additional costs. Very good to work with. Once we get the survey, that's when I normally like to have a kickoff meeting so we can spread the survey out over a table. We can start talking, okay, here's where the new main is going. These are the extensions we're going to do. Here's where our hydrants want to go, our 3-gate clusters, things like that. We have worked with Dan on the water tank project now, developing specifications so we know what sort of materials and products the town likes to use for the valves, hydrants, things like that. So we have all that has already been established between GHD and the town, which is a good thing. So after the kickoff meeting, we just advance our design. We'll do a 50% design, which is basically a rough layout. We'll bring that back, present it to Dan, go through it. advance that to the 75% design, which we start showing the additional construction details, have another review meeting, and then move on to the 100% design, which will be a bid-ready set of plans. We did include a task in there for additional meetings. We put up like 8 additional meetings. We know with these projects, there's usually a lot of public outreach. We want to make sure that the residents, businesses, things like that, our impact to them is minimal during construction. This won't be summertime work, I'm guessing. It'll probably be off-season. With any given luck, we can work through the winter to minimize the impacts to the residents. But I, like every other major road in Cape Cod, do not touch in the summertime. So that's understood. I do like to put in the scope on page 2 of Exhibit A, just what the town's responsibilities are, what the out-of-scope items, just so we're 100% clear on what GHD is doing and what we're not doing. So some of the town's responsibilities, and Dan's been great to work with, and I got to say that the Harwich Water Department, their database, their records, it's light years above other water departments on Cape Cod. No offense to the other water departments, we love them all, but the town has excellent background information. So like Dan already has, just to provide the material specifications, any existing GIS information, the size of services, things like that. We expect the town to provide that, which Dan's already provided most of it. And then anything that we ask for comment on, and the only reason why we put this in here, like if we give a set of plans, say, hey, Dan, can you take a look and comment? We ask within 5 days to get those comments back, because some towns just, they take a month, 2 months to get back and it gets lost. And we just try to stay diligent with that. The out of scope work, things that we are not doing. So we're not doing, there's one permit that we're filling out as part of this. It's the modifications to water systems greater than 3,300 people. We're not planning on doing any other permitting as part of this project, but I don't foresee any other permits. We're not going through a conservation. I mean, we're working by some conservation areas, but typically when you're working underneath paved areas, the Wetland Protection Act allows you to put those utilities in. If we have to do an RDA with the town of Harwich, that's no big deal. We'll just do it.
RDA? What's that?
Apologies. It's a request for determination of applicability. It's basically something you fill out. If you come in within a certain distance of a wetland, you have to file what they call a notice of intent. If you alter any wetlands, it's a Wetland Protection Act. You have to file these permits. The jurisdiction lies on each town's conservation commission to uphold that. So a lot of times with these projects, when we're just running pipelines underneath existing roads, if we have to go over a river or abutting a marsh, technically we might be within that buffer zone, but because it's under a roadway, it's not like we're disturbing any wetlands. So my first step would just to meet with the conservation agent, say, this is what we're doing, what do you want us to do? Some towns, Newburyport says you don't have to do anything if it's a utility replacement. Other towns, it's an administrative review. Other towns, it might be what this RDA is. It's basically a minor permit that gets reviewed, and the Conservation Commission determines whether or not your project is applicable for an NOI. So if you get a negative determination on an RDA, that means proceed. If you get a positive determination, that means you are within a wetland area. But I've done hundreds of miles of pipeline underneath roads, and I've never had to do an NOI.
Notice of intent.
Notice of intent is what an NOI. It's a longer permit you have to fill out for. And it's when you start altering wetlands, mostly for site work or new development, things like that. But the way it's always good to check with the conservation agent first, just to make sure we're not.
The only thing that's there is the Herring River Bridge.
Mm-hmm.
That's not an issue.
I don't believe it to be, because we're going to be, even though we're working within the vicinity of it, it's previously established utilities. So It says it in black and white in the Wetland Protection Act. If it's replacement, repair, or maintenance of an existing public utility that serves, water, sewer, drainage, that you are exempt from the NOI process. A lot of conservation agents, they don't seem to acknowledge that, so I have to gently remind them, saying, hey, it's written right here in black and white. I don't think we need to spend $10,000 on an NOI to put something underneath asphalt. But I don't anticipate that to be any sort of an issue. Projects like this, when it comes time to fund construction, these major infrastructure projects, one popular route of funding is through the state revolving fund. It's a state, they call it the SRF funding. It's a state loan program. It can offer 0 to 2% loans for 20 or 30 years. But given the pandemic and all the impacts to the economy, there has been a surge in certain grant funds. So there might be options, whether it's through FEMA and MEMA, they have a ton of money going into what they call the BRIC program, and there's other funding sources out there. So it's always good to have shovel-ready plans, because a lot of times these kind of, I call them these shotgun funding sources, just like the ERA Act of, like, I think that was 2007 or 2009, something like that. They sought projects from towns that had shovel-ready plans. So we just want to make sure, for now, the goal is to get these plans to completion as soon as possible. So whether it's SRF or whatever the funding avenue, it might be something unknown that pops up, a new program. We'll have shovel-ready plans ready. So we are not doing any type of, under this project, grant application. You know, the SRF application that process requires a significant effort. It can be anywhere from $25,000 to $100,000 to fill out an SRF application. I don't think for a water main project it's fairly small. If grants come along, we typically write a grant application at no cost, provided we're the consultant that does the work if selected. So just like the Lothrop Ave water main, we try to help out as much as we can, find grant funds to offset the impact of these projects. We're not including any bidding phase services, just because, again, we don't know the exact timeline of when it's going out to bid, things like that. I'm assuming when it does go out to bid, it'll be bid electronically. It's a fairly straightforward process. Gone are the days when you print out 30 sets of, you know, the plans and the specs, and you have to lug them into town hall and all that sort of stuff. So it's electronics the way to go. And obviously, because we don't have the funds for construction, we're not including any sort of construction phase services as part of this project. Once it moves forward into the design and construction, we can discuss the scope for what the construction phase services have to be for, you know, to manage all the paperwork, the shop drawings, payment requests, the on-site inspections, the clerk of the works, things like that. But that, we can hold that discussion for a later date, but none of that is included in the scope of work. Payments, price. So this is a good sized contract, $485,000, $485,198. But the one thing I want to make sure that the board understands is that this is not a lump sum contract. It's an hourly not to exceed. So a lot of times when we start getting into these larger projects that are in the six figures, we like to do it with a not to exceed amount that's billed on hourly. So if we don't need to bill all that time, if we can fly through design, everything goes good, the stars are aligned, we get it done for $300,000, we're just going to bill you $300,000. That's it, no more. So it's not a lump sum. You're not going to get, and oftentimes, more often than not, we finish these projects underneath this budget. So this is strictly a not to exceed value.
Russ?
Yes.
Does that amount include your reimbursable expenses or not?
It does, for mileage, things like that, yep. Yep. And when we submit invoices, everything, you'll see everybody's hours, what expenses we put in, that'll be broken down with each invoice. So if there's a question, hey, how come Russ has 1,000 miles, what was he doing? You know, so you're gonna be able to see every invoice that comes in and verify that.
By the end of this project, we'll have made 500 trips up and down Route 28.
Yeah.
And did you say that that included the SRF app or not?
It does not include the SRF app, just because we're not certain that that's the route we're gonna go yet for construction funding. That's more or less it. We did include a ManHour Matrix in the back that kind of breaks down each one of the 8 tasks with the hours assigned to each person, just to give you an idea of where this number came up with. Again, it's a large number, but it's a lot of water main, 2.4 miles. So I will do my best to answer any questions.
No.
So there's no way this would go out to bid before it was at 100% of design?
Correct. You need to have, in order to go out to bid, you need to have the engineer's stamp on the plans and specifications, and to get to that point, that's what we call the 100% design.
Right.
So we would want to bid it out, yes, at 100%
Okay, so I
completion.
mean, the town has seen bids go out at a lot lower than 100%, so we wouldn't want to see that again.
Not the water department.
That's right.
Yeah.
My-
Get that
You're in the
In-
water
in
department
my
now,
past.
Noreen.
Yeah.
You're in the water department now,
No
Noreen.
comment.
Do you expect any kind of easement work to be required with the driveways that you said you would have the temporaries under and stuff like that?
I actually don't, because the state layouts are usually fairly wide. Now, again, I could be wrong.
Yeah.
But once we get the survey back, we're gonna see the extent. I'm guessing it's probably maybe an 80-foot layout, 60-foot layout. So what we do is we normally we'll clean up all the impacted areas to the property line. When we do the services, we will put the corporation on the pipe and put the curb stop at probably just at the property line, or at a location as close to it as we can. And then from the curb stop to the town, to the property, that's the private property's responsibility. But we'll connect that as part of this project. So I don't think that we'll have any, unless we come across something truly bizarre, but we're putting this right underneath the paved area now.
Right.
So
Even though it's probably not easement work, it may be going just a little bit into the properties where people think it's their property, you know what I mean? The
yeah, we have to go right up to the property line, so we're gonna be.
Right, so there'll be a little discussion. Yeah.
There will be, and we'll, as part of this, like we just, for example, we did the water main on Commercial Street in Provincetown. If you're familiar with it, every single property encroached upon town property. They had 2, 3, 4, 5 feet of what they thought was their property within the town's layout. And every property has, planters, retaining walls, different aesthetic designs. It can be a beautiful, gorgeous fieldstone with a koi pond in one that was in, so we had to go property by property and say, listen, this is where your property line is, because we needed to widen the road and do all sorts of stuff. So we're very familiar with the deed research and what we need to do. If there does come to be some type of conflict where we think if someone has an elaborate, whether it's a wall, landscaping feature right on the property line, we think putting the service there is going to create a conflict, we could cheat it back on, leave it in the layout, or maybe we push it further on private property. It's a call that you make after you look at each property there.
My last but biggest question.
Sure.
It might be more for Dan. So remotely, how would this tie in with putting wastewater pipes in the same place?
Yeah, so we talked about this at some length when we were requesting funding, prior to town meeting. And one of the discussions that Russ and I had were with respect to 28 and the desire to get a dry pipe in there prior to paving the road. The DOT project is from the Dennistown line to the Herring River Bridge. So I have at least noted to DOT, I think at their 25% design meeting, that we would be looking to be a non-participating entity for that project for sewer pipe, at least within the DOT portion. With respect to the remaining part of it, as Russ, when we talked about it, I said, Russ, are we shooting ourselves in the foot here by doing the water main project without considering the sewer main? And the response was, no, we're going to design the water main, as if there was a sewer to be in the road anyway. So that would be considered. However, we wouldn't be designing the sewer pipe for the other stretch of 28 unless the town, appropriates funding to do so.
Right. So, so that means that for the second section, the non-DOT section, we wouldn't. I lost you there, Dan.
Yeah. So it wouldn't be covered under this scope to design the sewer for that section.
Yeah. Right. But the water would be anyway, and
Right.
there would be ample room.
Assuming the gas company doesn't do what they did with Queen Anne and everything else, and put the gas main down the center of the road.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, what I can just add to that is that GHD has a separate contract with the town to do a sewer model for the areas of sewering. So by the time by the time this contract gets executed and we get the survey, that's going to be probably a few months. In a few months' time, we're going to be wrapping up that sewer modeling. So we are going to know, as part of that, we get the conceptual design and the depths of all the sewer mains. So we're looking at Route 28 as part of that. We're going to know what the depths of the sewer mains will need to be in that area. Yeah. And we can come back and have that conversation. We did do a financial analysis on what would the savings be if we included a dry pipe as part of this. And I think we had like a 7-figure savings if we did them both as part of this project. Now it takes this water main project that might be $5, $6, $7 million, it might bump it up to a $12, $13, $14 million project. But if you did the sewer independently at a later date, you're coming back, ripping up all that asphalt, you have to repay for all of it, you're digging much deeper, all sorts of things, and that's where you get the savings. So if you did combine it, it's gonna have a larger price tag, but it is gonna save you money. I think the question lies, when is that corridor of Route 28 gonna be sewered within the town? If it's not gonna be sewered for another 30 years or 20 years, I mean, if it's within 5 to 10 years, then it starts saying, hey, we gotta take a serious look at this. If it's outside of that,
And it's up to the selectmen if they want to participate at the time that we do this project to fund the pipe
section.
to put it in.
Right.
it's a big cost for a dry pipe. You wanna make sure you're using it, but I think all indications do say that sewer is coming to Route 28. It's just a question of when, and can we work it in with this project to make it make sense, especially for the ratepayers too, or for the people paying for this. We don't wanna put in a dry pipe if it's not gonna be used, because probably in 20 or 30 years, DOT is gonna repave again, and maybe we catch it on the next go around.
Right.
Maybe not, but once we get done with the model, we'll have some better clarity. And maybe the sewers, if they don't have to go, if they're all between 4 and 10 feet, that might dramatically reduce the price that we had talked about before, because I had really no idea how deep the sewers are going to be when it came up with that financial analysis.
Right.
So this will be revisited probably at midpoint in the fall.
Russ, just in your best guess, what's the worst case, best case scenario for time frame from start to finish to get that project done on 28?
For just the design portion, design and
To
construction,
do the construction, actual digging up that road, like how long do you think?
2.4. So a good water main crew on good digging conditions can do 300, 400, 500, 600. I've seen 800 feet of pipeline put in a day. But with this, they have to get the above grade water main established, and those things are always getting them chlorinated, getting your residual samples, all that stuff. Those things can always be cumbersome. You're probably, if we could start in the fall and winter agreed with us, we could probably have it done by springtime. If winter does not agree with us, you're probably looking at 2 construction seasons.
Okay.
But yet it has to be within the DOT scope, right?
Well, correct.
So,
We have to talk with them and see when the timing of that project is. So if they're gonna say, yeah, we're gonna pave this fall, we gotta jump on this and expedite something quick,
yeah,
which we can
I thought they
do.
were talking about 24.
24. Yeah, 2024 is the present estimated time for them to do the stretch from the Herring River Bridge to the town line.
So what I would propose to DOT is that, hey, let us put the pipe in, let us do backfill with conventional methods. You're obviously redoing this pipe in 2 or 3 years. If there's a little bit of minor settling, contractor's gonna own that in his warranty period. Come back and fix any sort of settling, but if you're just gonna come back and totally redo the road in 2 or 3 years, let us at least get the utilities in, and please don't make us put in seat control density fill, because that's just a gigantic waste of money. And hopefully they'll work with us on that. I mean, it's not a ridiculous request.
Dan, is there any question that National Grid might be,
No,
or was that just a?
yeah, it was an
Okay.
aside.
Right,
Because we're gonna have difficulty on some of the roads in the future citing sewer due to the location of gas main that they just put in. And the new dig safe regulations that were put in place, I think 2 Julys ago, after the Lawrence gas explosions.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be fun.
I don't know how that got away.
And the other thing I'll mention, our surveyors, JC Engineering, they do all the survey for National Grid too, so they can get access to the up-to-date, all the gas mains. And I think, we've had to get all sorts of security clearances to get record drawings from National Grid, but because JC works with them, they're a great surveying outfit that's why we like working with them. We get good, accurate. Now, I'm not gonna say for a 2.5 mile, we're gonna come across things that we did not know about. I can guarantee you that much. It's just the way this construction goes.
Yeah.
We do try to be very thorough in the design, identify all utility conflicts. If there's areas that really look suspect, we may go out and dig a test pit during design just to verify depths of utilities, things like that, to get better information. But because we're putting the new water main in the same trench where the old one is going, it makes me feel a little bit better, because they obviously had to clear that way to put that main in at one point. We're not putting it in a separate corridor somewhere else in the road that is could have all sorts of stuff that we don't know about in it. So
Can I ask a question, because I know someone's gonna ask me?
Sure.
Is this an opportunity to put the electric lines somewhere down below?
It's about, I run into this all, especially in Provincetown. We run into this all the time. I
Because
think
we have wind here, you know.
I think 10 years ago, they were saying something like $1 million a mile, but with nowadays, so you'd have to reach out, start that discussion with Eversource, get them involved, their engineers involved, give them the limits. It would be a significant price, probably 7 figures easily, if not 8 figures to the project. But if you look at
storm surge and
what would the cost be if a hurricane wiped out the power on Route 28, you know, if there was catastrophic damage, you know, that's the argument back and forth. Things like that, you know, one of the pursuits we can look at is the town has a hazard mitigation plan, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so through FEMA and MEMA, they do offer, you know, this BRIC program looks really exciting. It's BRIC, Building Resistant, either Resistant or Resilient Infrastructure Communities. And I got word, you know, at the funding round, last funding round had $30 or $40 million. The next funding round is upwards of $1 billion.
oh,
So these major projects that increase resiliency for the town, those sort of things are better suited for these large grant funding programs. But there's also agencies, you know, like CZM, they have a coastal resiliency grant. I don't know if through your MVP process that you identified overhead power as one of the top concerns in low-lying areas.
I don't know that was on the list,
But even through that same grant, that CZM Coastal Resiliency, if there's a concern, you know, there are other grants and other fundings if you want to look at that seriously. But it's a big dollar figure. It'll be an 8-figure construction.
I fully think that putting electric utility lines underground makes the utmost sense. My only concern is, you know, if we wanted to try to tie it in with this project, it took us a year for them to extend the wires above grade on Lothrop 2 or 3 poles down to our tank. The reality of us,
Eversource, you know?
the reality of them actually being able to coordinate, you know, on our timeline, I don't think is.
You know, if it would help, I mean,
yeah.
we can reach out to Eversource and just say, hey, the town, you know, we're doing this project on Route 28. Town was somewhat interested in bearing, you know, what are your thoughts on it? And just, you know.
I think that would be great, because,
Yeah.
I know we're gonna get that question, and it does make sense with the storm.
It would be great,
should
but
at least know what it costs.
we
Yeah.
also have to
Should've
work
done
it in with
20 years ago,
DOT's
right?
schedule, right? So
Yeah,
that's
that's
another
right.
constraint, you know, to get Eversource to move
Oh, to
fast
work
enough
with
for
Eversource and
DOT.
Mass DOT, now we're really,
I'd love to see it, but
we're really pushing on it.
Coordination,
maybe
I
we
like
can
that.
put in the service
Yeah.
lines while we're at it, while they're putting in the electric lines to the
Yeah.
houses.
Yeah. If everybody works together, there's a lot that can be done, and it really does make sense. Say, listen, we're ripping open a main corridor of the town. Let's do this right and do it once. I wish there was more proactive planning and thinking, and not so much from this board, but it's just the utility companies can be such bears to deal with. And don't get me wrong, they're essential. We need them, and we have to honor their requests. But they can test you, to say the least.
All right. Any other questions for us?
Just one more little one.
Yep.
It doesn't apply to the design phase probably, but I'm just so concerned, you know, we've had some really bad overbids and we keep hearing things about labor and supply chain things and prices are gonna triple and quadruple and, yeah, I mean, do you see that in this part of is that something we have to be frightened of come construction?
I don't think you need to be frightened of it, but you need to be aware of it. You need to be, so we do our real due diligence when it comes time to put the cost estimates together. You know, we look at other projects that we bid recently to get the bid prices. We reach out to contractors, talk with them to see what their bid prices are. We reach out to the vendors and the distributors, the Fergusons of the world, to say, okay, what are your material prices now? Even things like, you know, we had I think it was last summer, we had multiple tropical storms hit the Gulf Coast. Well, the facility that manufactured the resin for PVC pipes got their power knocked out for weeks at end, and it kind of put a big shutdown on the PVC pipe production, and it jumped the price. Now, we're not doing PVC main here, but that just goes to show you that even a storm somewhere can impact the trickle-down effect. So when we do our cost estimating, we always look at the most recent bids, talk with contractors, and talk with the supply houses. And we've done enough of these projects where we can give a pretty a thorough cost estimate. We do generally estimate a little bit on the conservative side. You know, we always want that number to go down because we know whatever the first number is we say is the number that people remember. And it's a lot easier if that number goes down rather than saying, no, it's not going to be 5 million, it's going to be 10 million. And then, you know, it's the last time GHD works for the town of Harwich. So, no, we're very careful with the cost estimates. And when it comes time, yeah, you want to, I mean, things can change week by week. I know the vendors now are having extreme difficulties, mostly because they can't, the pipe suppliers are not holding the prices for more than 10 or 15 days. So I think the state bids, you have to hold the price for 30 or 60 days. And it's really creating a lot of chaos with the vendors. I mean, and they're not even getting quotes like for valves until the day of the bid opening. So, you know, the day of the bid opening, Ferguson finally gets the quote put in. It's just really
The day of?
the day of, because they shop. What happens is if Mueller releases the price for the valve to one agency, you know, then it'll get shopped out. Every other vendor is going to say, okay, what was that price? They try to undercut them, all of Mueller's competitors, so they don't release it to the last minute.
Wow.
Oh.
And it's just real. It's
Can we buy the stuff in advance?
You can. There is an option where the town can procure materials. But there's good and the bad. Usually you save because the contractor just marks it up. But you want to make sure you get good materials because when it comes to installation, so say the town buys pipe and valves, contractor puts it in, fails the pressure test. It says it's a faulty valve. That's when the finger pointing is, well, you bought the valve, we didn't buy it, you know, it's yours, the valve doesn't work, and you know that it cost X amount of dollars to replace it. We have to put it back. But with water piping, I mean, these are things that it's all straightforward routine material. Some towns have done that. It's a separate materials bid, and we can entertain that if you want to look for just a materials bid, and then you just hire out the contractor to put everything in. The nice thing with having the contractor do everything at once, if something goes wrong, it's on him. And then it clears that debate up right away. As long as you're very careful and you make sure you're extremely clear in the bidding documents who owns what and what their responsibilities are, and any cost overrides that are blamed on material malfunction that the owner would have to pay for. If the system didn't work because of an installation incorrectly, that's when the contractor's at fault. If you didn't tighten down all the megalugs, or you didn't do something you were supposed to do, and then you fail a pressure test, then it's on the contractor. But if you did everything you're supposed to do, and it's a leaky valve, which we've had, or you know, one of the parts is defective, then it comes back to the town. But that's a relatively low risk when you do it that way. So we can entertain that when the time comes.
All right. Anything else? Good. Thank you, Russ. Appreciate it. That's
Thank
a
you
lot
so
of-
much.
A lot of good information there. Thank you.
Great. Well, first in-person meeting for about a year and a half, so it's actually nice to not talk to a computer, so I thank you all very much.
Thanks again, Russ.
Yeah,
Good to
take
see
care.
you.
Talk to you, Dave.
Hi,
Yeah.
nice to meet you.
All right, Tom, you're up.
Very good.
Tom is with the New Sauce exploration. He's going to give us a little input.
Here's something kind of old fashioned called a brochure.
Wow, yeah.
I like that.
Everybody hands out jump drives these days instead of
Yeah, it's so
brochures.
nice. Wouldn't be able to touch it a few months ago.
Thank you.
It's in your inbox, in your email.
So let's see. I guess a little bit about the company to begin with, and then a little bit about myself and my background. GZA is a 700-person company with 30 offices. It started in 1964 with two engineers who worked in the geotech field, and that skill set has grown into a number of different areas for the company. We ended up in water resources kind of through dams, because geotech involves dams, but it also involves hydrology and hydraulics and so on. So we have a fairly good size water resources group of about 70 people. The company's headquartered in Norwood. There's about 150 people there, and we have an office in Springfield, Boston, Amesbury as well. I've worked for the company for about 6 years. Before that, I was with Haley and Ward, working alongside Leo Euskis, who some of you might remember. And he's actually the reason I went to work for Haley and Ward, just to be able to work with him, because he's a heck of a guy, heck of an engineer. Anyway, so the company's got quite a depth of skill sets and scientists and professionals all related to groundwater exploration. And in fact, 2 years ago they purchased EGGI in Meredith, New Hampshire, which is Emery Garrett Groundwater Investigations, which is a nationally renowned firm for water supply development, both superficial wells and bedrock wells. And they've done exploration, all over this part of the world, actually. So Jamie Emery is going to be a participant in this project. He'll be a principal that helps to guide the project and a resource also. As far as myself and my groundwater exploration experience, it's something I've done for 37 years locally here. I helped find Orleans Well 8, Barnstable Fire District's Well 5. I helped with the development of Well 20 for Dennis Water District. We're doing a well supply development on Nantucket for what's now the Nantucket Water Department. It used to be the Wanacommet Water Company. That's the second source that I've worked on for them. We're quite familiar with the geology here and the drilling methods. And for this particular project, the modern day rig is what they call a sonic rig, which is a high frequency vibration driving method that's very suitable for this type of aquifer, and we can get to good depths. Here we're looking at about 140 feet or so. So the program that I've laid out, and I developed a budget and provided a budget letter based on the depth of the existing well 10. And within that budget, what we anticipate being able to do is drive 5. Basically, all the wells are going to be driven by the same rig. 5 of them will be finished as 2-inch observation wells. They'll initially function as exploratory wells, and once we get the sites that seem to be the highest yielding, those 6-inch holes driven by the sonic rigs will be finished with 4-inch casing. So we've got an allowance for 2 4-inch wells and then 5 2-inch wells. And that will give us observation wells for when we do some short test pumping. That will give us aquifer characteristics. So we'll have, from all of this data, we'll develop a potential approvable yield for the well site. We'll develop some geologic cross sections that tell us what the aquifer looks like. We'll be looking at the potential zone of contribution and the potential sources of contamination within that zone of contribution. The initial stage of well site development with Mass DEP's new source approval process is to file a request for site exam and prolonged pumping test. So that is the intention of this phase of the program, is it will gather all that data, and that will be enough data to then file that application with them. And then there'll be some period of time that it takes for DEP to respond to that. And whatever questions they'll have, we'll of course answer and get you to the point where they say, okay, you can go ahead with the pumping test. That's something you'll need to fund in budget subsequently, whether you do that at a special town meeting in the fall or in the subsequent spring annual town meeting. And what else? I guess a little bit more on me. Like I said, I've been in this business for 37 years. John Churchill of JC Engineering was my first hire while I was at Director of Engineering for Horsley and Witten. That was 1997 to 2001. After that, I had my own company for 10 years. I was vice president of GI Consulting for a couple of years, and then I went to Haley & Ward, and now GZA for the last 6 years. So, always done waterworks. That's my bread and butter, and pretty familiar with the Cape geology and Cape water suppliers. We're doing a filter plant for green sand and granular activated carbon right now for Barnstable Fire District because of PFAS detections.
Is that at the fire academy?
Well, we're not pointing any fingers yet. But their well number 5 is on the other side of Flint Rock Pond from the fire academy. Yeah.
And
Working,
that's the one that had the trouble with.
yes.
Yeah.
Is that
That's-
at Mary
that's-
Dunn Road, the very top?
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Yep. And we're working with Yarmouth on an interconnection with Barnstable Fire District and on their drinking water infrastructure needs survey assessment, which is something sponsored by EPA. So we're in the neighborhood, and like I say, we've quite familiar with the Cape geology, and this is right up our alley.
So I got a couple questions.
Yeah.
So would we be, and I might have asked you these, but I think it'd be good if I did for the board to get in on the
Sure.
conversation too. So when we do get the monitoring wells in and the test wells in, will we be conducting, water quality analysis at that point? We would know, some indication of what degree of treatment we would need, or would that be coming after the
Oh,
fact?
no, we absolutely want to do that
Right.
as part of this. Yeah, absolutely. So it include the full suite of parameters that are required by DEP. So that's like routine chemistry, synthetic organic chemicals, volatile organic chemicals, PFAS, MTBE, anything that's on the list that's regulated.
And I think one of the other things you mentioned when we just spoke was depending on the siting of these wells and their proximity to the existing well 10, we may be able to get some relief on some of that monitoring or some of that testing or some of the, I feel like we had talked about if it's right next door, they may allow us to use some of that testing data. I could be misremembering.
Yeah, we can ask. I think the first thing is to see whether or not we're going to be in the same formation or not. If it's a different formation, then we should definitely be doing the full suite of testing anyway. I suspect that they will still want that, the full, because I haven't seen them waive it before, but we certainly can ask.
Okay, I must have misremembering.
Well, it doesn't hurt to ask.
Yeah.
One thing, in terms of well 10 is we want to minimize the influence of this new well on the existing well so that we can maximize production. So we would be looking to set the new production well with a 400-foot setback from property lines of town-owned land or water department-owned land to get it as far away from well 10 as possible, but still control the zone 1, that 400-foot radius of protection that's required. So there's 2 locations, south and north, but both east of well 10, where we probably look initially in order to do that. And
Where's well done? Northwest Gate Road.
Thanks, John.
What's
Thank
that?
you. I said thank you.
And then obviously we'd be monitoring the influence of, with monitoring wells and with the data loggers you have already at well 10 to predict what impact there might be on the withdrawal rate, from well 10 as well.
All right.
Yeah.
I know the Brewster Well right over the town line gets, I think, 1,000 gallons a minute.
Yeah, that's a great one.
How do you test that? You just put the data logger on there and just remove the water and see if there's any dropping in the
Yeah, you're essentially doing a stress test on the well. So you're pumping it as hard as you can. With these smaller wells, it becomes an extrapolation
Mhm.
of what you would yield with a larger casing.
Right.
But you get aquifer characteristics from it that you can then use engineering tools to predict what the yield will be.
And about how long would you say the process is, kind of say we start July 1, realistically, just so everyone understands how fast could it be before we see a real well pumping, assuming everything goes well?
Yeah.
A
Well-
production well, rather.
With a pumping station?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the best I've done on a private project, which was the Pine Hills in Plymouth, was a year. And they were fast tracking everything, and they were a fee paying client, so there was a mandated timeline that DEP had to respond. More typical for a municipality is 3 or 4 years. You know, with the Pine Hills project, we did a precast building, you know, that helped expedite it, and we were already designing while we were waiting for the new source approval.
Right.
So they took some elements of risk and compressed the timeline, whereas, you know, municipality typically would wait till you have the new source approval before you authorize an engineer to go ahead and start designing a facility, you know.
That's how we do things in the water department. Yeah, that's great. You had a question, Alan? You had a question?
No, I just think that, you know, he answered my question and the timeline, but, one other thing is, once, and if this well goes online, how will that, affect Brewster being, you know,
Well, if there was a larger aquifer model, we could probably tell that fairly well, but it obviously depends on the distance and whether or not they're in the same formation and similar depth.
so you would know what depth Brewster's at?
Sure.
Like similar to well 10?
Yep.
You know what that?
Yep.
And if you went below that, went deeper or not as deep?
Well, I really would have to rely on the model. I don't think I could tell you per se that easily. You know, that's, like if you have a confining layer or semi-confining layer, water sort of leaks through that layer at a certain rate to feed the lower aquifer versus direct recharge in the upper aquifer. So it depends on whether there's that kind of separation going on.
One other thing, I'm sure that the rust, you know, would that go into the North Harwich treatment plant? Would we have to expand that?
Yeah, I mean, that ultimately would be dictated by the water quality.
Yeah.
You know, and that will, and in the capital plan, I have a couple placeholder numbers, you know. If we could do if it's good water quality and, you know, we just need to chlorinate it and adjust the pH, we could do that relatively cheap. If it's something that has elevated iron and manganese, you know, we may have to add the filters at the plant over there. 1 or 2, you know, depending on what we find. So that will yield its, you know.
We'll get through the well first.
Which Brewster well is closest?
I don't even know what number it is.
Yeah.
I haven't driven past the town line there, but Paul was telling me that the well that they have over there
It's in Concord. So if you stay straight on that road, like our plant's here, I mean, literally it's down the road a few miles, several miles. It's on the same road going into the Concord.
I've looked at it from Google Maps. I mean, it's, you know.
Yeah.
Because I would
That's a
love
new
to see a
facility.
well that
That's a newer
size,
facility they have over there.
Yeah, they have a green sand plant at well 4.
I don't know if they have iron and manganese, but I guess, you know, to Alan, to your question, you know, there is high iron and manganese at well 10, which could indicate that we would see it in another location. But like we have at this well field here, you know, we have elevated iron and manganese at 4, but some of the other wells here, it doesn't present itself. So we really won't know until we start pumping water out of the ground.
Okay.
Well said, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you know, if we can get the same yield, and we'll be sampling at multiple levels as we progress, if we can get, you know, a good yield, which on the Cape would be like 1,000 gallons a minute, you know, that's a Pipedreaming situation. If you can get that kind of yield above that water-bearing material that is presenting iron and manganese, you know, would be more cost effective. It would be, you know, a shallower depth obviously is less costly to build, but also if you don't have to treat it all the time, the cost per 1,000 gallons is going to be less. So that's something.
When you think about today's well drilling, how advanced everything is, I think back to the 50s when ManHour was well drivers, and they had a lead weight a weight on the string, you see where the string got wet?
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah. Well, they're still in business. The brothers or the sons are actually.
Still have,
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
wow.
No, I've worked with Dennis Marr
Oh,
and
sure.
yeah. But now it's Peter Marr and Bob Marr is Marr Services Corporation, and that's the intended driller for this project. So we're not bidding. We don't have to go out to bid for a driller. We can, because this is considered part of engineering, we can hire them directly, which expedites the process. So right now, we base pricing on the pricing they provided us to just get them started as soon as we're authorized, we'll get on their schedule. And yeah, it is
I'm
very
surprised.
different.
I figured they were gone, you know.
No, they're very, very active.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, Peter Marr, they actually did the geo drilling for the Lothrop tank. And we had to
Oh, yeah,
do that.
yeah. Oh.
They thought you were going, Alan.
No doubt about it. Oh, yeah. God, they were here for years, you know, they did a lot of the wells here.
Yeah, they're still doing a tremendous amount of work for water
Yeah.
suppliers, particularly on the well
Yeah.
redevelopments. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, any other questions for Tom? All right.
Okay, well, our proposal is, I've sent it up the chain of command, it's being reviewed, and it should be to you either later this week or early part of next week.
Very great.
All right.
Thank you for coming in.
Thank you so much.
Nice
Thanks
to
for making
meet
me
you.
drive.
Likewise.
Not too bad in the morning, right?
No, easy.
All right.
Yeah, he's up
Yeah.
a little north of me.
Yeah, coming here is not bad.
Have a good day.
Thanks
you
again,
too.
Tom. Have a safe
Thank
ride.
Thank you. Yeah, what do they call it? My uncle used to do that.
Of course you did.
Yeah.
No, stick to try to find the water.
Oh.
It works.
I was gonna tip him a ton.
Right?
My uncle
It
used
just
to
all
do that.
depends on
And
some
my
people
uncle
can
did
do it,
it
others
really well.
Yeah, that's
I can't do it.
Back then, and
Some-
he'd go
I
nice
swear
and
it's
put it
not.
right- and you know what? Never failed.
Does that mean that there's water everywhere, or
Yeah,
is
I
it
used to
just
say-
Should we get a stick and have him go walk around?
You
Hey,
gotta
Dan,
find,
we're not gonna do this. We're gonna give you a stick. You're gonna walk around the field out there.
you gotta find the
dowsing
right.
rod.
Dowsing.
Divining
the
it.
divining stick?
Yeah.
That's right, yes.
I have
You
one on my
gotta
desk.
find, you gotta find the right you.
Is it a real one? Yeah. Does it work?
Yeah, it does. You can find.
Well, I know, there's a
Yeah.
lady somewhere. I remember reading stories about her.
It works for gas too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
The gas company is actually the one who showed me the trick.
with the welding rods.
Yeah, he just took a little tin,
Yeah.
put it in a piece of half-inch gas tubing, bent a 90 on it, and then was walking across the street. And right when you come across the gas main under the road or water main, that little pin will just right in line
Can't believe it.
with the.
But
Water
you wanna see him doing it.
I
with a-
believe you, but I'd have to see
With a
it.
branch.
I'll see if I can.
You,
I'll try it.
And
Have
then
a
actually
little
works,
exhibition?
They hold
Okay.
it, and actually twist the bar.
Some people can do it, some people can't.
You know, they
I
open
can't.
it up.
I don't know what it is. It won't work for me.
Never
I wouldn't trust myself doing it, so.
I've never been able to do it.
All right, Dan, let's move on to, buck slips, inclusion with the water, fourth quarter water bills.
All right, so if you aren't aware, the Board of Health enacted a fertilizer and nutrient control regulation back in January. Unfortunately, we weren't able to coordinate for the last billing cycle, but in hopes of spreading the message and advising our public that there is a newly enacted fertilizer control regulation. They're looking to put a buck slip in with the next mailing of our water bills. So Wellesley, if I missed anything on there, please. My understanding is they are covering the cost of putting the buck slips in. but we'd be looking for the board's approval to insert that into the bill.
What's the timing on this? What bill would it go in with?
July bill.
With the July bill? Oh, okay. No, I originally thought it was gonna be much later in the year, and I figured people would ignore the information, but July's great.
Hopefully we can get it before their summer fertilizer application.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we authorize the inclusion of the buck slips in the fourth quarter bill.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Put it to a vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Alright, so let's move back to old unfinished business, wastewater superintendent's evaluation. So what I have here, what we ask for the employees to do is an employee relations index, seeing that they work with Dan on a regular basis, so we get to see him, a couple times a month. We asked them to put, let's see, just to evaluate working with Dan, so it gives us something to use when we're doing our evaluation.
And these are confidential, so don't share them with me.
Okay, so again, like Dan said, these are all confidential. The employees do this on a voluntary basis, and it just gives them an opportunity to express what's going on, in the department, how things are going, so we can look at this when we're doing Dan's evaluation. So those are for you to take home, to use those during Dan's evaluation. We should all have a copy of Dan's evaluation. Now granted, obviously, I'm sure this new, have you used it before, Maureen?
No, but I have a
Alright.
question.
Okay, go ahead.
So, I started looking through the material and, we're, brand new in the department, but, having worked with Dan and on committees for years, I don't have a problem putting my views down on the management skills and other things. But what I do have a issue with is, I don't know if I can evaluate the actual projects, because we've just got, the first five, the goals, and I didn't know if we could, I'm speaking for you, John, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's all right, because I'm right with you.
Okay, that's my way, just tell me that. But, I didn't know if it could be weighted differently, like if John and I didn't, we'd have to really try to learn the whole projects, and, that's not gonna happen, so I just didn't know what you thought about that.
My thought process was to give you the option or opportunity to look at the evaluation, kind of get
Right.
familiar with the operation,
Process?
form the process, right?
Yeah.
Because we were given this to us a few years ago, and we said, okay, go fill it out, and there are some things in here that just don't work, that we never filled out, like, getting dinged for using sick time and things like that. So, I mean, we use it as a template, we fill it out because something has to be turned in. But again, I wanted you guys both to have the opportunity to look at it, fill out what you want to fill out, ask questions. Any questions you have about how we fill it out or how the process goes, look at the employees relations index or form to see what the employees are looking at in the department. And again, if you feel as though you want to vote on it and take a position on it, that's fine. If you want to abstain from the two, at the same time, you earned your seat here, and you should have the your option to make the vote. So that's why we're doing it this way.
And just for clarity, item 10, the same thing, the list of projects,
What page is that?
page 4. When it says for the following year, what year is that?
Starting July 1st with my anniversary date for the next calendar year.
Okay, so this is for FY '22.
Yeah.
Okay. And this one in part A on the first page, this was the same list but for FY '21.
That was, yes. So that was last, and then next year, the list on section 10 will be brought up to
Right.
page 1.
Oh,
So we're actually evaluating him on these that were done
right,
for 20.
and we're putting weight on what we think should be the highest priority, I guess,
21.
for twenty-two.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
22, sorry.
That's helpful, thank you, Gary. And knowing that we can put down on the areas we feel.
Yeah, and again, I mean, we still use this as a template. I mean,
Right.
a lot of these things, we you know, letters of complaint letters, again, calling it, you know, sick time, I mean, that's just,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna gig someone for using their personal time as sick time. I mean, it's
Right.
just,
I'm not gonna,
no, and I think we're gonna have this figured so legal too.
I said it was absolutely illegal, but like,
This came down under the former administration.
yeah, it was so illegal.
Okay.
And like, why would you want somebody sick coming in?
Again, I don't agree with a lot of things.
Yeah.
It looks real good penalizing people for using sick time in the
Yeah.
pandemic.
I worked in a place like that, it was awful.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
I still work for a place that,
Oh, the sick
you
watch.
can't
they
call
used
it
to
sick, yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
and Alan told me to keep the, scores low.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, you want this to go to his head, you know.
So again, the employee evaluation index, that's, you know, all anonymous, that's for our use only.
Yep.
So we have all the information we need, we should be able to, our next meeting on the 30th.
And I can't be at that one.
The
That's-
30th?
That's when they're having the funeral.
Oh,
I'm sorry, I'm
for your
sorry.
Thank
loss.
you. Yeah,
Sorry.
she was a great lady.
Didn't expect
She's
to see you.
92.
Wow.
No,
Nice.
so it's her second bout with cancer.
Right.
Such a fighter.
Hopefully she went peacefully, or,
She did, like, a
Thank
lot of
God.
my cousins were there
Oh,
and all their she and my uncle have some grandchildren, great-grandchildren that are coming from around the country. So it'll be a big family reunion too after
All right.
the pandemic. But it's up in Maine, so, I don't know if I need to be here for that particular meeting, if you wanna reschedule it or no.
Well, we need to do the rate, because it's already been advertised.
I mean,
It's already been
technically,
advertised,
there would be a quorum,
Right,
if I'm not.
yeah,
Okay.
so they could proceed, yeah.
but again, if you wanna have your evaluation turned into Dan, we can use that for that meeting, okay? And Alan, you good with that, to have it, the evaluation done for the next meeting?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Alright,
Yeah.
so do we turn it in to you,
no,
Gary?
you just bring it with you, and then we'll each do our own evaluation,
Right.
and then we'll do one together, cause you might have something you think Dan should be working on, I might have something,
Okay,
we'll come together as a board, put everything together, so he's not doing, 25
Right.
different projects, and just give
yeah,
him
so we
that.
bring them all in and we discuss it in
Then we,
public.
right, then we do our each evaluation, then we'll do one evaluation together as a board, that's the one that we'll use for Dan's formal evaluation.
Okay.
And in the past, have you,
Yeah, what I did was after the board, last year anyway, I took the ones that the board did and I compiled them, and for the scoring, I ran an average.
Yeah.
So if the two newest members contribute some sections, I can do the average based on 5, members for that
Right.
portion. So, yeah. So if you wanted to,
That's
when
the
you're,
way we've done it.
Yeah.
It's worked
Yeah.
very well, you know?
I think it's a fair way to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That way Dan's not going in 10 different directions,
Mhm.
just.
Yeah.
all
Well,
agree
he is though, anyway.
on- He's alright, he's young.
So the trouble is, we put a long leash on them,
Alright, so that's the, next up sewer rates. Are we good with the, are we all good with the evaluation part of it then? Okay. Alright, sewer rates.
so included in the packet for today's meeting was a memo that I put together with 6 different sewer rate scenarios, all kind of reflecting, really 2 primary different methodologies. And to start, I guess, we've discussed this in the past, but just an acknowledgement that, one, it is not expected that the 440 users in East Harwich will be able to fund the operation, sewer operations. Another thing before we start jumping into the numbers, in the memo, I also included an updated wastewater budget for FY '22. Now that doesn't mean the budget in Munis changed or the town meeting vote that took place changed. But since that time, there were a couple line items that we were able to reduce through negotiations with the contract operations. And when we're evaluating and trying to look at the equity of rates, I didn't want to have money that we knew we didn't need. When we put the budget together, we had a couple placeholders for contract services because we didn't know what it was going to cost. So I don't want to build or, talk about rates to try to fund that placeholder number. So the number in the budget that you see here reflects reductions from town meeting to more, realistic operational costs for the next fiscal year. So jumping back to the rates, or I guess before I do that, the specific adjustments to the wastewater budget were both with respect to the contract operations line items. In the budget that was voted at town meeting, the IMA related ConOps budget figure was about 140,000+. After negotiating with Chatham and Weston and Sampson, that revised figure is $90,612. So we were able to save about 50,000 there. And the budget figure we had for contract operations for Harwich only, in the town meeting warrant was about $185,000. Again, through discussions with Weston and Sampson and conversations with DEP, I believe we're going to get some relief on the frequency of wastewater pump station inspections, which should reduce that number down. So I'm projecting around $125,000 for Harwich specific contract operations.
So we have to pay for each individual inspection?
No, so it's, T&M, like the operations and maintenance contract. So if their operator, like our water pumping stations, we have to go to every pump station every day. With the sewer pump stations, for stations that have over 100,000 gallons per day of flow,
I remember this.
also need to be inspected daily,
Right.
which would require more manpower on Weston and Sampson. So if we can get a reduced inspection frequency because our flow's low enough,
Right.
the labor costs, they can
down.
cut
Okay.
back on.
All right.
Yeah. Now it's not a linear, it won't, if we take 150,000 divided by 7 days, it's this much a day and they only have to do one, it's not gonna be a linear reduction because there's other things that they have to do, like sewer service installations, grease trap inspections, there's other stuff that they'll be taking care of, but I do expect we'll see a reduction. So just in terms of total numbers, we cut out almost 100,000, I think.
And there's no way to automate those inspections?
Technically, I would argue that they already are automated through our SCADA system,
Yeah.
but the DEP and regulatory agencies, require a physical daily inspection.
Is
Because
it
if
an inspection of the actual system, or is it just to look at the
to
data
go into the pump station,
and do a
listen,
visual?
hear, visual, make sure, pipe's not leaking, just a sanity check is what I refer to them as, make sure that nothing's out of order. And again, you think, vandalism, anything, we just need to lay eyes on the facility. So I believe that will be able to operate in a reduced capacity, which should lend us some more savings. So jumping back to the memo, when we look at each of the scenarios, I have projected an estimated revenue, which assumes all 440 customers are connected, and what that revenue, will generate in comparison to what our operating budget is for the next fiscal year.
Can I just jump on the section that Dan was talking about contracted services again? I've just gotta say again on the record that him catching that error that wound up in saving us 50,000 of, the Chatham was applying the 23% factor to their construction as well as the pump was huge, and, you know, you know,
There's
I've heard.
treatment and collection system
Right,
services.
yeah, and I've seen it mentioned at a selectmen's meeting, and I don't know if the town realizes, you know, what a really great thing that was. That could have been going on for years then, 50,000 a year and more, so I just wanna make note of it again, that was a really great catch. It's too big to be called a catch by the superintendent, so very much appreciated.
I think there's a section on the evaluation for cost savings to the department.
Okay,
Sorry.
there we go. I'll fill in that part, yes. And that will slip and get published.
I was gonna say save it for the evaluation, Noreen, but
Yeah.
you're right though, because
Yeah.
that's just one of the many
Oh, I know,
catches,
yeah.
adjustments that Dan has made on wastewater, so.
So, jumping into the rate scenarios, you know, I kind of briefly touched on when we talked about it at the last meeting that I had started with Chatham's, you know, rates as a starting point, and I elaborated a little bit on that, and I guess I'll just kind of read that paragraph for the people following along at home. So the rate structure, and each one's, you know, rate structure scenario A through F. So rate structure proposed in scenario A was derived starting with Chatham sewer rates and converting them to the existing Harwich gallons per tier billing structure. Well, oftentimes I wouldn't recommend and don't like comparing ourselves to other communities because we don't know if they're funding capital improvement projects. We don't know the fund, you know, the financial structure of the department. So it's not always a good thing to do. In the case of Harwich and Chatham, you know, we are uniquely linked through the IMA, the contiguous nature of our collection systems, and you know that sentiment is validated in a Pleasant Bay Alliance report. So the Wright Pierce, on behalf of the Alliance, prepared a report to explore different nitrogen trading options between the 4 member communities, and to evaluate the benefits and, you know, costs associated with that. They developed an equivalent annual cost, which is a term I'm not always thrilled to use, but an equivalent annual cost takes, for 20 years, the capital cost to build the infrastructure, and then the operations and maintenance for that 20-year period. So that they boiled it down an equivalent annual cost for each of the technologies in the different communities. And then they derived a dollar per pound of nitrogen removed based on the different technologies. In the report, they discuss shellfish, aquaculture, innovative alternatives, permeable reactive barriers, which are something that removes nitrogen in the ground, from within the ground, conventional sewers. And when you compare Harwich and Chatham's cost for a pound of nitrogen removed, they're very similar. Harwich being $316 per pound, Chatham being $333 a pound. Now it does make sense if you boil it down a little bit further. We purchased capacity from Chatham, so it would make sense that the cost, you know, our equivalent annual cost would be relative. But also the way that Chatham funded their sewer projects is similar to Harwich in that they funded it through their tax base as well. They're also in a similar position where they're operating at a deficit, as we anticipate we will be doing for a period of time here. So I felt it was a good starting point. And after our last discussion with concerns about or the sensitivity around these residents now having to pay a sewer bill that they didn't have to pay before, and how costly that is, and that a portion of their tax revenue from last year was used to fund the operation. So the scenario I presented at the last meeting is actually scenario B. I went back and took a look, and Chatham, what they do on the sewer side, but not the water, is they have a $0 tier 1, which at first when I looked at, I said, you know, I really don't even think that we should, I wouldn't even consider that. But now hearing some of the conversations that this board has had, it almost kind of starting to make sense to me for this reason, right? It's likely that people are gonna be mailed letters, the orders to connect letters this summer, right? Which is gonna incur a pretty significant cost. For them to make that sewer service connection, they're gonna be on the hook for $7,000 to $10,000, some more, just to connect from the street to the house. And then, what if that person has irrigation? Then they're gonna have to pay a plumber that, whatever that costs, plus purchasing the sewer deduct meter, the backflow device, and to get that put in. My thought is that, in reality, some people may not get around to putting the second meter in. It's costly. We don't know how much flow is going to be generated. A portion of these residents' tax money was used to fund it. The $0 first tier is making a little bit more sense for those reasons. From a management of the operation and concerns around collecting revenue, not so much. But with respect to the sensitivity around those subjects, it makes sense to me, because people may not be able to get the sewer deduct meter in, and then their first sewer bill is going to be generated based on not just domestic consumption, but also any irrigation they might have used because they couldn't get a plumber scheduled because everyone's busy. So that, I thought, would offer a little bit of relief in the interim period, and maybe once things get running, and I think we all could agree that we're likely going to have to revisit sewer rates, likely a couple times. Well, over the next couple of years, we could adjust that. I'm not saying that I'm lobbying for this one, but I think I spoke against it at the last meeting, and after giving it a little bit more thought, I kind of see why there may be some value in doing that. So, scenario A does reflect that, a $0 tier 1. With all 440 customers, that would look to generate about $170,000 in revenue, leaving us a deficit of $232. For scenario B, it's the same, but I re-put in back that tier 1, so you can see the difference to the department with respect to revenue on that first tier is about $50,000. So if we do charge tier 1 usage, that would provide an additional $50,000.
It looks like scenario A and B just flipped from the estimated revenue to,
Right. So, to explore that concept a little further with the $0 first tier, and this is, I guess, just to add a note, if I'm not mistaken, the water department here used to include some usage with the base rate way back.
Yes.
So at one point in time here, the water department did include some usage with the base rate. So,
My first question was going to be, does Chatham's water rate have that no value? Because I was going to say, it seemed like we were walking, people would say, well, why doesn't our water rate?
Right.
So,
they used to,
right.
and when they redid their rates, I think Dr. Bob said the last time they did them, they added that first tier rate.
I like the no cost first tier. My only concern is that it might be hard to go back on it. You know what I mean? If in 3 years we decided we needed more, and then you told people that, but we'll see how that works. Can I say that we met, and Dan was kind enough to give me some time after our last meeting on this stuff, and we went through an awful lot of stuff. And I feel much better. I feel that a lot of the questions I expressed last time were things that we're not going to solve in the first couple of years of that thing, so
Right.
so we agreed, some kind of a best shot compromise on a conservative line for the users, would be the best way to go. And I even talked to Dan about possibly having like a sewer rate study, but we're just not there yet. We don't have data. We have things that we don't know about. And one thing we touched on was that in a perfect world, if everything was built right now, it would be phase 2 and phase 3. That would be paying. I felt that, Mike McCaskill was saying it would only be phase 2, so knowing that our goals were more aligned made me, think that these, one of these will be a good start, I did send you an email late this morning.
Oh, yes. That's why I brought my computer out, actually.
Okay, because I asked him I didn't see these in there till this morning, to tell us what each quarterly bill will be. And I didn't know what you want to use, 40,000, 80. The only last thing I want to say in case it comes up during a rate meeting is there were brochures published years ago that we don't have to get into, but it was quoted that if you were a 70,000 gallon user, then your annual bill for sewer would have been $600. That's probably not gonna come out to be true. It's probably gonna be higher than that. And all I can tell people is that was a figure given us by CDM. So that was just another estimate that was poorly estimated.
Right.
So
Yeah.
so if people, say, look at this brochure, you said over and over it was gonna be $571. That's the only answer there is.
Right, but,
So the other figures were from other places, but that figure came from them, so.
One thing that has come out over the years is that getting started, there's gonna definitely be a deficit for some time period.
Yeah.
Maybe 3-4 years,
5,
yeah,
10,
5
It's true
years,
of every
who knows?
business.
But
Yeah.
it definitely was planned
Right.
in, so.
No, just touch on what Noreen was saying about the rate study. Dan, at some point, once we are up and running and we have history, can we use a tie and bond analysis? Because that's another great tool we'll have. We'll be able to use a tie and bond analysis for water, for a wastewater. So,
Yes.
but again, it's gonna take, a few years to get that data. And even a few years, we're gonna have 400 people on this.
Right.
So it's gonna take 10 plus years.
And also to even know, what's gonna be constructed next, so we
Right.
have a better
Right.
idea. of
But at least
what
with
to
that,
do.
it'll give us an idea financially where we may end up.
Yeah. So what would the average bill be, right? I think
Right.
that was, so I can do that very easily.
Okay.
So do we want to start with one? And are we, for an average bill, if we say in the annual consumption of 70,000 gallons,
Okay,
the way that the spreadsheet is built,
You talking water consumption?
yes.
Okay.
So, this is for a sewer bill, sorry. So the spreadsheet, I'd be calculating sewer bills right now.
Right.
It was based off the 2013 to 2019 consumption, but I just punched one in for 70,000 to run these figures. So, let me just make sure. All right, so if we do scenario A with as presented in the packet.
Now, will these just be tier numbers that you're gonna read off?
I'm gonna read your average quarterly bill
Oh, okay.
An average
for an
household.
average user.
Right.
Okay, and now, but as far as what is the quarterly bill, and just before I start going to numbers, our water consumption occurs at different times during the year, right? So what I've done to try to quantify what those quarterly bills will be is used our actual quarterly water use data to apportion annual usage to the appropriate quarter. For example, quarter 1, which is beginning in July, 49.5% of the average user's consumption takes place during those 3 months. So when I've worked these bills out, that's done taking 50% of that annual consumption. So that quarter 1 bill is going to be their biggest, just like with the water bills. So
Is that by household or is that year round versus summer?
as far as when the usage is consumed, it's every
Is that
account,
everybody?
Yeah.
Like
just about. And
year rounders use, that's also when they use
the most. It's rare, right? How many consistent users do we see? Is it more than? I mean, steady bills throughout the year. is-
Seasonal
They're real
versus
low.
year round? Oh, boy.
No, I mean the usage fluctuation.
Is the part of that irrigation?
Yeah,
Yeah.
usually
Exactly,
with
a large
irrigation,
portion of
yeah.
it is
Okay.
irrigation,
Yeah.
it's a huge portion.
And that's
Yeah.
what I don't have the ability to factor into the
Right.
spreadsheet is how much of that Q1 usage is irrigation. You know, for example, I don't wanna,
And also the
a
number,
parcel on Heritage Way from 2013 to 2019 has an average annual consumption of 15,000 gallons. For, you know, in my calculation, Q1 I have them at 6,700. They could be using, you know, 4,000 gallons a quarter, 45, you know, but for, I guess on the aggregate, this is the best way I, you know, to, that could,
You know, I said 70,000 gallons last meeting, and the only reason I did that was a number that was commonly used in brochures. Now I'm realizing that is quite a high number,
yeah.
because somebody that had that much would probably have irrigation, which muddies everything, so
Right.
don't use 70 on my behalf.
but
Yes.
Use whatever.
but we don't know how many people are in the household either. That's
Right.
another factor.
True.
Can you pull up my house? I mean, there's 4 of us.
I don't have you in here, cause you are not in East Harwich.
Oh, right.
Yeah, me.
I can, yeah.
That's hard though. My
Do you
bill
have
was-
You wanna what?
irrigation?
Yeah, well, I big garden, and it was $1,200 for one quarter.
Summer quarter?
Wow, big garden.
Yeah, that's huge.
It's a good way to work. If you're gonna use water, you might as well use it there.
That's
you know?
it.
You can't eat the grass.
So, but for that 70,000 gallon
Yeah.
user,
Yeah,
right?
I think it's very kind of-
As long as they're the same.
Right, so, yeah, the
I
Q1 bill's
Yeah.
$181.
Right, okay.
Q2 bill, 55.43.
Yeah.
Q3, 50.
Yeah.
Remember, this is where we're giving away that first tier's usage.
Right.
So, if anyone uses under 8,000 gallons, you know,
Yeah.
wouldn't pay anything over base rate. And Q4, 93.84 for a total annual 380.56.
So that's a lot lower than we were talking before.
Now, if we can do that same, we'll do that same 70,000 gallons under the other rate structures here.
Mhm.
You know, just thinking about what Noreen said, and you were saying about, you know, doing a $0 amount for that first tier, and then trying to, you know, take it back or raise the rate. I don't have any problem with that at all, just because we're doing right by the customer by, you know, all the costs that they're incurring, getting online and getting up and running, and doing right by them by giving that first tier.
Right.
And saying, hey, look, all the money you're spending on this just to get online, we're gonna give this to you just to give you a little breathing room. And at some point down the road, like, we're gonna have to raise that rate up. But right now, this is a gift because we're all just trying to do the right thing by each other. I mean, I think it's really admirable to do that.
Well, I really
I-
like that the low people, the people that only use, like I used to,
Right.
before irrigation, I only used 6, 8, whatever, of
Right.
water. So I would be just the base rate,
Right,
and that would take the sting out of,
right.
So, from comparison purposes, the annual total for the first one, Noreen, you had was
80.
The annual, if you add the first tier, would be 538.50. So I can go back to each quarter.
No, that's all right.
So the Q1 would be 226.59.
These are showing off now.
Yeah.
Well, it does it all.
Yeah.
Q2, 95.89. Q3, 80.18. And Q4, 135.84.
Okay. All right, 538 for that one. I'm interested in the third one.
All right, let's see. Third one.
That's a higher base rate and also giving the first tier a no charge.
Right, and didn't I read that we use,
They just added $15
right,
under the 538.
Per user, right? So we got,
Yeah, which doesn't sound too bad either.
so that one, just make sure it's right. Quarter one bill, 196.29. Second quarter, 70.43. Third quarter, 65. Fourth quarter, 108, for an annual 440.56.
So it's right between A and B.
yeah,
What was A's total?
580, I think, right?
Yeah.
Well, A was 380.
380,
380 was A.
and B is 538. I mean, it gives us half of our estimated actual expense, which has a lot of unknowns in it, but that's, fairly reasonable methodology to, we won't get half because there'll only probably be 40 or 50 people connected, but the aspiration is to half, so.
Right.
That makes sense to
Yeah.
me.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
But no,
Dan, can you throw in scenario F,
Yes.
just on that high end? D, E, and F all have a higher base rate, but lower tiers, just wondering.
It's a different kind of sting.
Yeah, everyone's paying that base rate, just
Yeah.
wondering where that, well, I see what it puts it, but just, on average, the average user.
So quarter one,
this is F,
this is F. 259. Quarter two, 141. Quarter three, 127. Quarter four, 176.50. An annual, 703.50.
would you mind doing the others, just so we'll have them?
Yeah.
Since we came this far, in case there is
That was-
discussion at a rate hearing.
That was F. So we'll go, you know what? That was not F.
Oh.
I apologize.
I knew something was off, numbers in my head just didn't. I don't want to put them on the spot, no.
Which one was that?
I changed F late in the afternoon slightly. And I didn't change it here. Alright. So for F, to look at that again, tier one, $4, tier four, $5.25. So going back. Quarter one for F, $237.75. Quarter two, $136.25. Quarter three, $124 even. Quarter four, $166.50. For a total annual of $664.50. And that's for the 70,000 gallon user.
Yeah, that's the $100 base rate, $4, $4.25, $4.75, $5.25.
Yes,
Okay.
that is that one. So we're jumping back up to D, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
please.
Alright.
As well.
So quarter one, 234.05. Quarter two, 108.35. Quarter three, 93.50. And quarter four, 146.30. for an annual total of $582.20.
And would we bill, kind of average out over the year, or will like the quarter one bill be 230, that bigger number?
It would be the bigger number.
Okay.
What was the total on that? I'm sorry.
Total $582.20.
You know, I'm just trying to look quick, so I'm probably wrong, but, like on scenario A?
Yeah.
You quoted, oh, I guess it's the lower, I don't know, it seems like too big a jump, like look at tier 2, 543.
But no one hits tier 2. They only hit tier 2. For scenario A, they only hit tier 2 in that one quarter. They basically had just the base rate
Okay,
after that.
okay, so you see what I was saying, it seemed like too big a jump from
Yeah.
A to D mathematically. Alright, nobody hits tier 2, let me think about that. Okay, because of the seasonality of the water.
So with 70,000 gallons, right? If we're giving away that first tier, they're not hitting any usage costs in quarter 3. In quarter 2, they only have one unit
Okay,
billed
yeah.
at 543, so it's $5 over the base rate.
Right,
So those 2 quarters, that's where that that first tier freebie, if you will,
yeah,
makes the difference.
right. Okay,
But that first tier, at least as described by our water rates, is the tier that the conservative user can stay within.
right.
So
Yeah.
Did we
Plus,
miss?
plus from, reading the water regs, or whatever I read that we get, I forget what it was, but it wasn't like 40% of our income from the base rate or something. So I'm sure it probably doesn't matter that much to Sandy when we only have like 40 people connected, but as we move along, if more is in the base rate, then it's easier to estimate revenue.
So
In the beginning, nothing more,
for E, we didn't do that one yet, right?
right?
Quarter 1, 244. Quarter 2, 126. Quarter 3, 112. Quarter 4, 161.50. And an annual total 643.50.
Thank you.
That was D, that was D.
That was E.
E,
D,
E.
E.
D was a total of 582, Alan.
oh,
Dan, can you plug in something new?
Mhm.
Could you look at scenario C and do a quarterly base rate of $75?
C. So quarterly base rate of 75. Tier 1,
Yeah, leave everything else
Yeah.
the same.
quarter 1 would be 206.29. Quarter 2 would be 80.43. Quarter 3 would be 75. Quarter 4, 118.84. For a total annual of 480.56.
So I'm just gonna make and that'll keep our estimate revenue numbers.
And our anticipated revenue under that would be 213,366.25.
I like that tier 1-0 to start. And 75, I don't know, for me is, yeah, the 65 and the 85, I don't know, 75 just sounds like a quarterly number. I know that doesn't make any sense, but, and that'll bring us into a sweet spot for
Yeah.
the,
Gives at least half of our expenses.
Yeah, and I think my concern, you know, is if people, I mean, if they don't install an irrigation meter, you know, or this is new to everyone, you know,
Right.
and it's hard enough, you know, I just, I have a little sensitive to that people are gonna be, you know, forking out a lot of money.
Yeah. Well, it's funny when you said that, because as soon as I looked at it, I'm like, why are we giving, you know, stuff
For free,
away
right?
for tier one? And, you know, you make it a valid point. I mean, it's a lot of upfront costs, and it's the right, you know.
Just hooking up.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's gonna be, you
It can
know,
always go up.
right.
You can always go up in that, or that tier one, we can always assign it to people that are coming online for a 2-year period or something.
build history.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
It'll
could
make
be
you
a,
crazy. I know, sorry, but
Tears are coming down Wellesley's eyes.
sorry. It's a little too
Wellesley,
creative.
May I have a question?
Yeah.
So if you were to consider the zero model for this phase, how do you see it changing for future phases for those people hooking up? Would they be given the same concession?
But that's what
I
Right.
you said.
Yeah,
Saying-
that'll
and-
make you crazy.
Right.
Well, just thinking ahead.
But I think it's a,
so,
I think it's it's, you know, it's a progression, right? And it's a lot of out-of-pocket money
But
or loans
At the same
for
time,
people.
you know, we can always say that quarterly base rate has the tier one built into that base rate. I mean,
Well, I mean, personally, I don't think I would, at this point, want to extend that to like new people coming on in 3 years. I mean, to me, the rate is the rate, but I mean, my thinking would be 5 years from now that the rates will change anyway, and if we wanted to put tier one back in, we have so much more, it'd be a different world. We have so much more knowledge about expenses, about how many
That's true.
users we
The
have,
cost
and
might be
how
lower
many
because
would
there's
go, yeah,
more
so I
volume.
wouldn't
flow, I
commit
mean,
to,
yeah, and
yeah,
Flows.
I wouldn't,
Yeah.
I
it's just
wouldn't,
three variable.
I
It's
wouldn't commit
irrigation
to
meters.
saying everybody for their first 2
It's gonna
years.
be sticky.
It would be too complicated, you know.
No, yeah,
You stay in front of
yeah,
Wellesley.
yeah,
That's just my, you
yeah.
know,
3 or
She's
4
on your
years.
But
side.
that's the thing. It's
Right.
also new.
yeah.
Yeah,
You know, you're saying 5 years. You know, we visit rates. It could be 2 years. It could be, you know.
Right,
I mean, we're being a real world then.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. We'll
So
have some kind of
Right.
Yeah.
history to
Develop a
history
scale
by.
gets us there.
Yeah.
Right. You know, economies of scale. Right now, you know, as our customer base grows from 400 to 1,000, you know, our operation isn't going to increase to that same extent, and that's where we'll start to, I think, as we start to find that spot where customer starts to offset expenses, we can start talking about that first here.
So Dan, so let's just stick with scenario C for now, right? Just have an idea and stick with the base rate at 65 and the tiers as is. And your estimated revenue, that's based on 400 some odd customers,
Yeah, the 440.
right? And the expenses are the $403,000.
Yeah.
If we, can you do instead of 400, say double that, 836 customers? What would that give us as an
So
estimated revenue? Well, I guess we would just be doubling that then. 196 or 400,000.
yeah, everything would be.
which in theory, eventually we'll probably have 1,100 customers,
Right.
but so far away that
Yeah,
we just need
Yeah.
to
got a feeling.
hit a compromise.
There'll be another body sitting here.
Stop
It'll
it.
be their problem.
Just stop.
How often does he say that?
Just lately, too often. Just
You're
stop.
talking about the whole committee,
No,
right?
he's talking about him.
No, I'm talking about the whole.
The body.
Geez, I mean,
Oh, all right, okay.
yeah, no. Yeah,
I can't,
Yeah,
because it's there.
No,
these
I mean,
are
it's just
actual,
basic
like,
math at
Yeah,
that point. Just doubling it. We're looking at like a little over 200,000. So I mean 400,000, which is in line with our expenses. I mean,
I like the zero tier first rate as well. And I think I kinda like Judith's suggestion of the $75.
So we're not deciding this today, right? This is next Wednesday?
The 30th.
Well,
Yeah.
no, the water rate
You
hearing
guys,
is on the 30th.
Yeah.
The
Yes.
wastewater rate hearing, I believe we had proposed for the
Oh,
15th
okay.
of July.
July 15th.
okay.
And if we do wanna maintain that deadline, then we would need a
We gotta
motion.
pick it today. That's why I tortured Dan yesterday.
So we are voting today.
If
Yeah.
the board, yeah,
To support a scenario.
I like that adjusted C with the $75.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that.
Which scenario,
It's C,
See,
With a
for the
$75.
$75 base
See.
rate.
quarterly 75.
yeah, okay.
Our average bill would be $480, estimated revenue $213,000
Okay.
for an annual.
So the estimated revenue would be, 213.
For 440 users.
So, okay. So, are we ready to make a motion on
I'm ready.
it? Yeah. All right, I'll move that, we adopt, sewer rate scenario C, quarterly base rate at 75, and with, 0 on the first tier, and tier 2, 543, tier 3, 583, and tier 4, 605.
So we have a motion to accept scenario C. Is there a second?
A second.
Any further discussion?
may I just clarify for anyone who may be looking or listening after the fact, scenario C is presented in the packet, reflects a $65 base rate, and Alan's motion included in a change to what was presented to be a $75 quarterly base rate, so just if anyone following along.
So no, so we have a motion, we have a second, no further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Very good.
Beautiful.
All right, superintendent's report.
All right, couple of updates. So I know our senior board members know. I don't know if Noreen and John are familiar, but
Experience.
experience, meaning been on the board,
I didn't understand.
freshman, you know. So the
I don't want you to offend Alan.
The Food Forest Initiative Group
I'm
in
almost
East
there,
Harwich
so.
did a planting along the Eversource right of way on our Wellfield property, which is great. We discussed it a couple times, but that basically pushed back Eversource's application of herbicide around our well fields. So I did a presentation, I think I shared it at the water forum where I discussed it, and the town of Brewster reached out to try to get information on the project because they were interested in doing something similar. After talking with Brewster, I reached back out to Paul Sellers of Eversource. So he is the guy at Eversource, if you will, for lack of a better term, that helps fund these projects. So Eversource for the Food Forest Garden spent thousands, if I'm not mistaken, over $10,000 in plantings. And this is good because Eversource doesn't have to apply herbicide. It's a benefit to the town because we get to keep herbicide away from the well field. In talking with Paul, you know, I said, what's your appetite to do these sorts of projects? You know, do you do them frequently? He said, yeah, we do them not super frequently in Massachusetts, but we do them over, you know, across the country in our right-of-ways. More often, they are wildflower gardens. A lot less maintenance than, you know, the Food Forest Initiative garden that has to be, you know. And I talked to Patrick Otten, who participated and brought that Food Forest Initiative project to me about, you know, potentially expanding the footprint there to encompass a wildflower garden. And Eversource, you know, is interested. I believe that they would, again, be willing to support funding for this project. Benefit to the water department, again, is we're pushing them further back away from our zones of contribution. And it would require a proposal to Eversource, but I think that that's a similar thing that previous group did for the other project. So really just kind of want to get the board's appetite to, continue exploring that project. And then we'd come back with more. But
I missed the beginning. Where did you say this?
off of Bay Road,
Oh, okay, yeah.
Why don't they just do it all across the Cape on all of the,
because the Eversource doesn't, and that's the thing, Eversource will fund it, but Eversource doesn't manage the right of way. If, like
But
with the
if-
food forest garden, that group in East Harwich still goes out and maintains that garden. If they don't maintain it, Eversource will resume their vegetative management plan in that area. So there has to be an understood maintenance, community involvement in maintenance of that right away, as with wildflowers, the food garden, or else Eversource will come in and do what they have to do to.
I mean, it's a win-win for Eversource. I mean, they're gonna initially invest $10,000, but then we'll have the community maintain it. I mean, it's,
and they won't be putting the
right.
everywhere and upsetting
Yeah.
everybody. And
As far as it's a win-win for us too, I think.
Yeah.
In my opinion. Keep them-
Can we enlarge it? I mean,
That's-
like
well, this-
throughout town? Or
Yeah, I
throughout
mean, I
every-
think we can. It's again, who's going to maintain it is.
How close to the well are these gardens?
So I actually have. Glad you asked. Take that and pass it
I think that
down.
was set up. I feel like this was a
It
setup.
wasn't, but
Oh yeah, here's the map right
He helped
here.
him with his computer
Yeah.
yesterday.
I have to
yeah.
tell you, I have to tell you, it's,
Well, you'll get, honestly, I
I've
mean, Patrick was a good source to start this off. Maybe you could get a
Grant.
community group
Yeah.
together. He could be in charge of it,
Yeah.
and delegating to like different areas and or assisting. I know he's a big supporter of this,
Yeah.
obviously.
I spoke to him briefly about this. We've had, it's tough to catch up, but he, he watched that water forum thing, and he and I talked briefly about it, and he actually emailed me asking for me to, let him and his group know what I was thinking. I think they're in to
That-
say,
It seems like we should have him in as a courtesy.
Oh, right.
Put the
he's
work in.
awesome.
So this will have to, if everyone's interested, right, we'll have to, I will work with that group to prepare, we'll have to provide a plan, a planting schedule and a maintenance plan to Eversource. That's, I think, one of the conditions of them funding the project. So there would be, a continuation of this discussion moving forward before anything happened, but right there on the map, you see those big pink circles are Zone 1's
Are they
contribution.
400 feet?
Those are 400 feet,
Yeah,
the
okay.
400 feet boundaries.
Okay.
So what I would propose is that we start at the, start of that boundary and work out in the right of way as our priority location, because they already can't spray within the 400-foot radius.
Yeah.
So we want to start at the edge of that and work outward.
Yeah, that's the existing garden right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they want to extend.
And what's this one?
Those aren't there yet. Those are the two locations I'm proposing. The garden is on that side.
It's on this side, right?
Yeah.
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 So you want-
but
oh, so it's
I want to
further
go
down?
from where they are to the property line.
I got you. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
I want to bring it all the way up.
There's a garden there already?
Yeah, the food forest
It's
initiative
closer. Yeah,
garden.
it's closer to the road. It's like
I don't know
Alright.
how old the aerial is either, because they planted it last year.
Mm-hmm.
So that aerial might not be up to date.
Sounds like John has a boundary going from the size of his garden already,
yeah.
so expand off that.
Yeah.
And I believe that the wildflower gardens are less maintenance also.
Yeah, I tore one down. I built a 300 square foot wildflower garden and now I've grassed it over. It was so much work.
Oh, it was.
Oh, it was?
Yeah.
Why was you, because it kept growing
Well,
out, or?
The
you know,
weeds and
The
stuff.
weeds get
when you do a mix, yeah, exactly. You really have to weed. I mean, if you have a field,
Yeah,
but otherwise you wind up with 80% of one thing and 20% of another, and I didn't have sun and turkeys and, it was too much.
And I would be reliant upon the Food Forest
Right.
Initiative folks for,
Yeah, it was a
'cause
lot of work,
I don't know
but,
how to-
I guess that answers why Eversource just doesn't put down wildflower gardens.
Right.
Right.
yeah. I mean, sometimes they look great, but sometimes they don't all look like in the pictures,
Right.
and,
But who cares if it's on a, I
Yeah.
get it at your house, but
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
By planting that.
That's why I had to
you
get
just expanded
irrigation, I wiped out
Yeah.
that garden.
The herbs and the boundaries. It's great.
Well, I have to say, Eversource has been better than in the past, because I was out there one year, and they were hand cutting,
Really?
instead of spraying, within the well area. But I'm sure in the past, nobody out there,
it just
Shoot the
squirted
juice.
away.
yeah.
well, I'd say that we're,
Alright.
it's pretty,
I think I have consensus to move forward.
Yeah.
So just a couple more updates. The procurement of the bottle filling stations has begun. I do have a meeting next week with the town administrator to discuss some of the more administrative stuff. If for Brooks Park, we'll have to do the historic district application, which we tried to go through before, but now we can actually do it. So that is underway. Verizon is doing antenna upgrades on both the 39 tank and the Oak Street tank, so you guys are aware. Lead and copper sampling, we're going to be looking to do or start next month. We are finally inching closer to the finish line for our Elements work order software upgrade. The maps were published. I got a note yesterday that the maps were published to the new GIS software. So now it's Elements, the actual program to come in and deploy on our server, and we should be finally done with that upgrade. This afternoon, I have my final meeting with Horsley Witten, who has been working with us on the risk and resiliency assessment that the department had to put together in response to the 2018 America's Water Infrastructure Act. So there's targets for water systems depending on the size of the water system. So we're going through our final meeting this afternoon, and we'll be submitting that prior to the June 30th deadline. And then I guess one other thing, I did receive correspondence from, let's see, make sure I'm trying to think of where we left that. The abatement, an abatement that had been previously heard and denied, reached out to see if the board would reconsider. So where I think the only time we've done that in the past was for Soundside Court. We had denied them, and then they came back to appeal, and then they were denied again, which is what brought us to the appellate board. So where the board had done that once in the past,
which we won that one, by the
we
way.
did win that one.
So basically what happened was, I forget the property, they had an appeal, we denied, they paid the bill. They want to appeal our decision. I believe they're assuming by appealing it, they come back to us, which in fact, if they want to appeal our decision, they have to go to Boston. But because they've already paid it, it's probably
They can't.
null and void. So our question is, we've already denied it. Do you want to give them the opportunity to come back before us again and rehear it? It's not something we can discuss right now because it's not on the agenda. We'd have to put it on the agenda to have discussion on it at our next meeting. But is that something that the board wants to bring back and rehear?
This is Sunside?
Neil
No,
Road.
no.
This one in particular is Neil Road.
In the road?
Neil Road.
Neil Road.
Neil Road.
Yeah. They had they have like a Cape Cod basement, I believe. They had a water leak. They had about 6 inches of water in a 10 by 12 basement.
I can. You want me to read the letter?
Yeah,
I
could
can
you?
read it.
Yeah.
Yeah. We would like to appeal the abatement decision of April 14th in accordance with MGL Chapter 5964. Payment in full, $1455.34 was made on May 4th, 2021. Background. Jane, my children, and I rented this home for 2 weeks every year for 25 years. We were able to purchase it from Phil Waystack in November 2018. We plan on retiring there in a few years, but until then can only enjoy it during the summer and some weekends in the off season. Jane is a teacher and only off in the summer. Our basement is approximately 15 years old. It has concrete walls and floors. It is approximately 15 feet by 8 feet. Jane and I were at our home on February 14th. As always, I checked the basement to ensure all was okay. One of the valves at the boiler failed. Even though there was approximately 6 inches of water down there, I was able to turn off the main valve quickly. I caught the leak in time, at least I thought I did. The boiler and hot water heater were not ruined and didn't even need repair. They're approximately 6 inches off the ground. We had our plumber, Scott, I don't know how to pronounce it, came over in less than a half hour to fix the issue. I'm sure the meter's working fine. I'm just confused about where the 266,000 gallons of water may have gone. Everything else is in order. We have 3 brand new toilets, no apparent other leaks, and we put in a well for irrigation 2 years ago. I think of myself as a conservationist, though the thought of wasting water makes me mad. Jane and I would appreciate any abatement amount you might consider. Thank you for your consideration.
So is the amount of water that was in the, does the amount of water that,
No.
got pumped match what was in the basement? Or
No.
could it have been running for months and?
Without going in the basement and physically inspecting, 266,000 gallons over what duration of time? And is there a hole in the floor? Is it is there any block concrete?
So it might have seeped
cracked?
out,
I
in
mean,
other words.
You just don't know.
It's not like a bathtub.
No.
So basically, the problem we're having is we actually cannot have a discussion on it because it's not on the agenda. The only reason we bring it up is, does the board want to put it on the agenda to hear again and have a discussion on it? My opinion is no. We've already had the abatement. It's not our responsibility to find out where the 266,000 gallons went. It went through the meter. Someone has to pay it. I feel bad that they've paid the bill and they missed the opportunity for the appeal. But
Did they understand the process? That if they paid the bill, they would not have an opportunity? I mean, is it written somewhere that?
Yeah, it's
It's
spelled.
not in tiny print somewhere.
No.
That's what I mean. I
No.
mean,
And-
is it?
This email came in, isn't it this week?
And I ask because clearly they looked up the Massachusetts general law. So can we assume that they also would have looked through all our online stuff? And-
So our abatement denial letter
has that in it.
would have cited
That's all.
they could appeal this decision through
We give them
the
language.
state appellate board, so
And that they should not pay their bill.
I believe that is on all the appellate, so I don't,
It doesn't,
That's my question.
it doesn't say it in the denial letter that they should not pay the bill. We lead them to the website and to do their own research and to go through the process. And that was a recommendation by legal counsel years ago of how to, put that on the denial letters. And they were on the stance of leading them to the water. We're not going to tell them how it all works. We're going to tell them this is, it's a phone number or an MGL that they need to go and do the research on their own.
In the letter, it was included though that they could contact us if they would like a payment plan for that particular invoice that they were requesting abatement on,
Yeah.
and we never received any follow-up.
Yeah, and we did offer a payment plan when we denied it.
Yes.
But my question is, realistically, if you're not an attorney, right, and within the scope of what somebody should do to do this,
I thought.
could there be a misunderstanding on their part that, they may have paid the bill, thinking that they still could
think
apply
it's-
for?
The bill was paid after the abatement, too. like a
Yes.
20 days or so after. So the abatement was heard on the 14th, the bill was paid on May 4th. And then
the
they
letter
didn't
would
reach
have
out to
gone
us
out.
until June regarding this.
Oh.
Yeah.
And they still can go through the other process.
They can't.
Oh, because they
It's
paid.
It's closed, it's done,
Closed.
finished.
Isn't there some language on the back of our bills too? I meant to bring in just some language. I'll look at it when I get home, but, just hearing this, and it would be an unusual coincidence for somebody to have, you know, a unique problem with water and then also to have one with electricity. But with electricity, you're told to pay the bill and fight it after the fact, so that's
Yeah,
strange.
that's my concern. I mean,
Well, electricity is an analogy that I like to use because I couldn't conceive of calling my electric utility and asking for an abatement for leaving the lights on.
Well, it would be through claiming a bad meter, that's the only, yeah. the only way.
So, alright, so going forward, do we want to put this on the agenda to revisit for our next meeting?
does it say in the letter whether they applied for the state?
No.
That's my,
Yeah, the
Well,
appeals
Tracy,
was.
I know Tracy
but
went back and forth at some length explaining.
the
They have
process.
options now that they've paid it to. I believe that they'd have to file a civil
Docket.
court suit.
Okay.
So that's the route that they can go now that they've paid it. If they hadn't paid it, they could go to the appellate board and request to be heard. Yeah.
Yeah, somebody's gonna pay for the water. It's been pumped, it's been lost.
That's not my
No, no.
concern.
I believe
I-
Judy said that they
My concern
really
is just that they
had a fair share.
understood the
Yeah.
process and they, like, my initial thing would have been to pay the bill and argue it later. And that's my concern.
It is fair, that's a fair statement. They do not live in, from what I can tell, they don't live in Massachusetts. So MGL is probably not something they're familiar with, you know. This
So-
process may be different in the state that they reside in. But it was still months, you know, could have had that conversation between April and May before it was paid.
If you'll sleep better having us bring it back and revisiting it, I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Unless they bring some new evidence to
Exactly.
change it, you know.
But
if you want to bring it back, I have no problem bringing it back and revisiting it.
on the merits that they may have misunderstood the process. Nothing to do with the decision, but,
I'll support that.
okay, thank
I
you.
want you to sleep tonight.
We could put a copy of the denial letter in the packet too, so that you can see what it says. And if we can also find something from the appellate board that's sort of like a summary of how it works, we'll include that in the packet too, because it is a good time to just like look at it
Alright.
and make sure that we can be clear enough. But as I said, like probably a decade ago, legal counsel said, keep it brief. They need to do their homework. We don't they didn't recommend that we tell them how to do it or go about it. But it did come up once before with an abatement in the
This is
past.
for that house?
No, this is,
Alright. So let's, you know what,
Okay,
let's
thanks.
just put it back up, let's rehear the appeal for our following meeting. See if they have something they wanna add to it, we'll give them the opportunity to be fair, to be heard, and
Yes.
we'll discuss it at that point.
so
But, yeah, what are we doing
We're gonna put it on the agenda to revisit,
amongst us?
yes.
Not calling them in.
No, we need to notify them that we're gonna hear it, so they have the opportunity to come in and
Oh.
give us some new evidence, or, again, it's not our responsibility, or it isn't a lie on us
and
to explain where that water went. It went to the meter.
Well, yeah, this is a new policy that we're gonna do now, because-
No, I think it's on our,
This was properly heard, it
right,
was, it was voted on, complete, done, 250,000 gallons of water. So.
I'm not saying,
Yeah.
going to approve or vote in favor of the appeal. I'm just saying we're gonna give them the opportunity. It sounded like they made a mistake or they weren't sure exactly how it was supposed to play out. I agree with you. We heard it, it was denied, you paid it, mistakes were made. Some other customer might have just paid the bill and gone through another appeals court. They're asking if they think it lies with us, our responsibility. It doesn't. Just trying to give them the benefit of the doubt. Again, my position hasn't changed from the first vote, but
Yeah.
it'll be
Agreed,
fair. Let them come back, say whatever it is that they want to say. I don't know if they're going to show up. I mean, you're giving them the opportunity, but that's really.
One last thing is their auto pay, residents, they're on auto pay, so they had contacted, us through email after, receiving the letter. Auto pay comes out right before your, a few days before the bill is due. And I had emailed him, if you want us to, if you need help getting that off auto pay, please let us know and I can help you, do that so it doesn't, go into that queue.
Okay.
And I had never heard anything back either, and, that was back in April, and now it's.
Oh, so that big payment came out of auto pay.
Yeah, but
We asked
we
him.
told him that
Yeah.
if you want us to help you, if you don't know how to do it, we can help you get that off there, so you could, have it remain unpaid, and we could set you up with a payment plan. We gave him all those options, but now we're hearing about it, now it's June, this was back in April.
I would just, for the process piece, and I know everybody's done everything they're supposed to do, but just so that this does not go to litigation, because it could, I think we should just give them the opportunity to do their presentation again.
Well, as far as going to litigation, they have to file a civil
Right.
claim.
Just an aside, I didn't know we had auto pay, and I'm sure that was on some piece of material that I got or saw over the years, but maybe when we publish our new water rates, that might be an opportunity to remind blind people like me that, cause I'm gonna sign up.
You can also go and view your bill online, pay your bill online,
Yeah.
Okay.
instead of a paper bill.
And they do text now. I
And
love the text.
And phone.
And I love it, yeah. So then I just go boom, and it's done.
All right.
Sorry.
And
No, it's fine.
this is not about the water. This is not about what everybody has done. This is about, I'm concerned that these particular people misunderstood the process, overlooked their auto pay thing. I think from a legal perspective, there's too many holes to not give them that opportunity to come back to the table. Doesn't mean that I'm gonna change my vote.
I don't agree with you at all. I mean,
Okay.
I've heard many of these cases, many. I mean, in far more water too. And,
I'm not saying I'm changing my
well,
vote.
I'm saying to you, folks, whether they're here year round or they're here 2 months, they need to take care of their property. They need somebody to watch the house. They need to be responsible. I mean, I'm telling you, I got history on this.
That's not what I'm
And
talking
I
about. I'm
know-
talking about their
Yeah, I know. I
their
understand.
opportunity to
I understand where you're
what do
coming
you call it?
from. Yeah,
Refute.
okay.
To-
Well,
And I
So
think
be it.
that part of the process they misunderstood, and that's the only thing I'm worried about protecting. I am totally agreeing with you that
yeah, whatever.
I agree with you too, Alan,
Mhm.
but as a courtesy to Judith, so she can sleep tonight.
I would appreciate it.
I will put it on the agenda and bring it back. It's not gonna cost us anything. We'll revisit it, we'll see if anything new comes of our revisiting it, and we'll take it that way.
You got it. Okay. So be it.
All right?
Last thing I passed out was just a June to date pumping comparison this year versus last year.
Wow.
So you can see, we're looking really since the middle of the month to be quite a bit lower than we were last year, which is good. That's indicative of some response to our water restrictions. I have asked Bernie to pull the static water levels of all of our production wells, so he's going to be doing that. There may be a need to shift at the next meeting on the 30th with drought status, well levels, whether or not we need to increase the restrictions or increase policing of the existing ones, but to be determined.
How, you know, I was a 2-week tourist for 1,000 years, and I certainly wasn't watering anything, but how do you, I mean, I don't know if it even applies, but how would you get that information to renters, or now that they're really gonna come here July
Right.
1st, to run already here?
So I think
But I guess they don't
Yeah.
really water, do
right,
they?
it would be the homeowner, you
Yeah.
know, and my hope is I will be able to, if there is a change needed, I will be able to have a recommendation at that meeting so that we could get a notice on the bill that's going out in July that state, you know, water ban in effect, because, you know, we've done somewhat of a campaign and we've gotten, you know, got a response, as you can see, but if we're at the point now in the season where we're not gonna get any more recharge. It's just
Um,
likely not gonna happen.
I wonder, even if, you know, a flyer down at like the Chamber of Commerce, people go in there, tourists go in there,
Yeah.
renters, or, I don't know.
How about those street signs? You know, like we have like, you know, water restrictions, or are we getting any complaints from people saying my neighbor or whoever is watering every day? Or,
Police.
and I guess the biggest complaint would be Stop and Shop. Now granted, I know they're on their own well, but they're still drawing from the
They
same
are,
aquifer.
right?
Are
Did
they
they
on a well?
convert to a well, Stop and Shop? Okay.
And I know we have no control of that, they're on a well, but at the same time, they're still drawing from the aquifer. Can't we just send them a friendly saying, hey, you know, you are you know, in the town of Harwich, and you know, we're all facing these restrictions. Could you be a good neighbor? And granted, we have no authority over you, but could you do something with cutting back on your watering?
How are they using it?
Well,
No, but I mean, where are they using
Their
water?
water, are they watering?
They water the
all
parking lot all the time.
irrigation. Irrigation.
Oh, really? On those little areas? I didn't think those areas were big enough to
We
water.
get drip lines, I think, in there too.
Yeah, technically, does the town own all the water?
No,
No.
we don't. I mean,
Under the
but
ground?
we share the
No?
aquifer.
Not unless
just
they're
because-
connected.
Share the
guess.
aquifer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Again, we have no authority over it,
Right.
but to be a good neighbor, I mean, everyone else is doing their part. You know, and you
Eventually that'll change.
just a thought. That's all. Just it was on my.
Yeah, and that's, I haven't really, I think I got a text from Val in Chatham, you know, if Stop and Shop. I haven't really heard too many other people.
All right.
on it.
Then we're
They
gonna
probably
hit,
don't even know how to,
Right. Well, how
how
about
to change the,
yeah? Well, how about like a street sign? If we can move it around different parts of the town, just like at the
Yeah,
intersection of
lights.
137.
Like,
You know, like you know,
light
please, you know, I don't know. something.
Because the thing is,
Do we
the
have
signs
one?
that we have, the police, we have access.
Yeah.
I don't know, they're probably available because of sewer project, you know.
Right.
But, you know, people drive by the signs.
You can't read
at night. You can't read them, and once you drive the same street every day, you know, you just, you
well,
don't
pretty
notice.
soon, we'll hit that end of July area when it doesn't matter whether you water or not, everything just turns brown and, you know, people use less.
Yeah, I just think maybe like on the corner of 137 and 39, up by the flagpole, and just as a friendly reminder. Do you have anything else for the?
No.
The only thing I wanted to mention was I was on the capital budget seminar yesterday with Dan and Noreen, and it was very, very validating. I mean, I felt very comfortable knowing that what we're doing, we're on the right track as far as budgeting. Were you on the call, Sandy?
I wasn't,
You were.
but I've taken his class a couple
Right.
times in the past years. So yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I
a
thought-
great,
I
it's a
could be
great
wrong.
opportunity to fill in
Right.
blanks.
But I was just saying on the capital seminar that we were all on the call yesterday, it was just validating, knowing what we're doing, we're on the right track. Because a lot of things he was talking about, we're already doing. And believe it or not, some towns use retained earnings to balance their budget, which we don't do. So I found that kind of concerning that you're using retained earnings to balance your budget. And they were talking about doing a 5-year capital plan. We do a 7-year capital plan and a 30-year rolling plan. So I was way out of my comfort zone. I mean, a lot of it was over my head. But it was very, it was interesting. I learned some things, and like I said, it was very validating. Like I feel as though we're on the right track. We're doing good work.
And how about that, you'll love this, Nantucket has 5 enterprise funds. 5, they didn't say what they were.
I wanted to ask. I kind of wanted to ask. I was just 5 enterprise funds.
What was his, sorry, I was,
It was the seminar. Yeah, so it was the capital
Enterprise fund.
Imagine the
Enterprise
transfers
enterprise
and the-
fund.
Yeah, I'm
Seminar.
sorry I missed
Yeah.
it, my brain
It
was
was-
just
Yeah.
not.
It was like I said, it was way above my outside my comfort zone. It was very validating. Like I was very happy like what we're doing here.
yeah,
And we're doing the right thing. We really are. So as far as rates, I asked about our free cash, what number that should be, and we were always told $1 million.
Yeah.
He said anywhere between 16 and 25% of your operating budget. I mean, we're 5 million. We're doing $1 million. I mean, we're 20%. I mean, we're not. I don't feel as though we're overcharging for the services that we're offering. So it was very validating.
and everything goes back into the system too, you know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
What was the thing you were saying? I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. What was the thing you were saying about the rate?
Rate stabilization.
Yeah, the rate
fund.
stabilization fund. I like that.
Yeah. We discussed a rate stabilization fund so that if you do have one of those wet years where you're anticipating revenue, you don't meet it, that there's a stabilization fund to offset any missed revenue that you would realize. So I thought that was
It's like a little safety net. Which,
Yeah.
Versus digging into retained earnings.
yeah.
Yeah, but we haven't encountered that I'm aware of.
We almost when we did the
first quarter.
the rating.
Yeah, there was,
I
when we went to quarterly.
billing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
tight.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
And do any of the other enterprise funds have a, like a capital, an extra capital fund for long-term
So
infrastructure?
And that is not allowed
Yeah.
under
Yeah.
the enterprise fund law.
Yeah.
As he,
Yeah.
however,
Rebate.
he said that he
Is that
is
something-
lobbying on behalf of making those, legal again. Because when you're talking about a multi-million-dollar asset, to be able to
Yeah.
set funding aside, when it's built for its replacement, it makes sense. But right now, that's not currently accepted practice.
So, you have to rebate, you have a percentage you can maintain. Anything over that percentage, you have to rebate the customer base.
And something along the lines too is about the enterprise fund, your rates should be somewhere along so you can just cover your costs, like not accruing a significant amount of revenue.
But because it's hardware, like it's gonna break down, and you can't. I mean, unless your town is running a budget in a similar fashion, which we know ours has not been. I mean, it's changing. How can enterprise funds rely?
Well, that's what always bothered me, but the other way around, I mean, we've done so much better with the enterprise fund as far as departments are. In the past, the funding all went into the general fund, and then whatever you did as far as infrastructure or whatever, it all became, on the tax rate, so.
Well, another thing he said on that line that was helpful was that for a percentage for targeted retained earnings, I think this was one of your questions, Gary, but he said for a general fund, he said about 16% or 2 months worth of operating experiences. But he said for water and sewer, it would be more like your target would be more like 10 to 25% of operating. And the rule of thumb was an older system like ours would be up at the 25%, not
Yeah.
the 10 would be the
Yeah.
brand new one. So that was good.
So far, I mean, it's gone well, you know, and I think, we've been on the enterprise since '06. So,
That's all I had for, the commissioner's report. Does anybody have anything for the commissioner's report?
I just wanna verify our appointments, you know, the company's starting to arrive, so I know that we have the 30th at 1 p.m. That's
That'll
a
be-
definite.
That'll be here.
And you said the 14th or 15th? The 15th was Thursday.
Yeah.
Okay, so
And that I
that,
believe was 1 p.m. as well.
okay.
And that is the
Sewer
sewer
rate.
rate hearing.
Oh, that's it. Okay. The trust is meeting at 1.
Did we? I don't think we. Did
We haven't
advertise
published
that?
it, no, we haven't
could-
advertised
we
it
could
yet.
Amend that date.
Yeah, we have time, because it hasn't been
That-
advertised.
Or
So
make it at
15?
11? At 11?
That's fine with me.
Or 8:30?
8:30 is tough for me, because
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
I gotta get used to
I guess
it.
he slept in
well,
2 days.
what works for you?
11's fine.
Time-wise?
11's perfect for me.
Why are we doing it on the 15th rather than the 14th anyway? I'm just curious.
It was just
Throw it
when
out
we
there.
set up a schedule.
Yeah.
Why we're doing it the
We-
14th, you said? Or
Well, the
15th?
14th's a Wednesday. I was getting used to
Yeah, we
Wednesday.
used to do Thursday
Okay,
meetings, and
okay.
then we've kind
Try to
of
find
gone
a
to
path now,
Wednesday.
just
So
give it up.
yeah,
All right.
We
I-
can do,
That's
I'm
fine.
fine with Wednesday.
Yeah,
at
no, I'm
1.
open all
The day,
days.
the
Don't
day
book
doesn't
my
matter
meeting.
to me. The day
Right.
doesn't matter, just to move a time. But
I want to say our annual report to the Board of Selectmen refers to the Water and Wastewater Commission meeting like the first and third Thursday of the month at 8. I
It
thought.
does, it's said that for a long
It
time, but
did
it's,
when I
we've segued
started,
away from
Which
that.
is, what, 2 years, 3 years,
Yeah.
4 years?
I'm open both days, so
I'm here
I was
both
just
days, so I
asking a
don't-
question.
I just need a time, and 8:30 just is tough, because I gotta go
Oh,
to
no,
bed.
no, no,
Yeah.
yeah.
11's fine with me.
We
I mean,
want you rested.
Yeah, oh, yeah. Much as
We
it
want
is.
to do 11.
11 is better, because if we have a 3-hour meeting, I mean, at 1 o'clock, I have to leave at 3. I mean, I have to be at work. I don't wanna come in like Browns to the meeting.
So
So,
you think it'd be a 3-hour meeting?
no, I'm just saying, like, I mean, they're
Okay.
not normally 3
Yeah.
hours. I don't wanna leave. I don't have to
Right.
leave in the middle of it. I mean,
Yeah.
so 11 o'clock is fine with me. I don't wanna interrupt.
15th, 11.
That,
14th
yeah,
or
I
15th?
would
I don't know.
prefer on the Thursday, just cause I have to go off Cape so often, and if I have,
Oh, meeting.
One-
So you want it
yeah.
on Thursday?
yeah,
Okay.
if
Thursday the
possible.
15th?
Thursday the 15th
At 11?
at 11 a.m.
Great.
Rate hearing.
Okay, Thursday at 11 a.m. on the 15th. So, but I just have one question on that. So when you advertise and, you know, put the packet online, I'm just curious, will that include, I mean, you probably haven't even thought about it yet, but will you present like all the scenarios? Will you present just the selected one? You might have to think about that a little bit, but I'm just, you know, it could be a big topic, and I'm curious what will be in the packets for the public.
Yeah. So as for the meeting on the 15th,
Right.
I think maybe depending on if people show up, you know, if no one shows up, I mean, we've all had a conversation, you know, and that's been the case a couple times. If people do show up, absolutely, I would go through all of it for sure.
I see, yeah. So for the packet, it would probably be the one that we put our
Packet.
consensus on.
Well, we have to
Remember-
publish the advertisement for the rates, you
Right.
know, in the newspaper. So it, you know, and it would be on, you know, we talked about putting it on the same sheet as the water rates. You know, so that if someone pulls rates for the water and sewer
Yeah,
department, that
okay.
they're both
Yeah.
on the same
Yeah.
kind of document.
Right.
We wouldn't be voting that document, we're just
Right.
voting, you
So
know,
the legal
rates.
ad would say these numbers,
Yes.
which is C.
Mhm.
Okay, and the packet will say whatever you guys feel comfortable with the week. that
Hopefully
you're
I can have the
posting.
GIS map, if I can get the map live, if I can somehow figure out how to do that,
Yeah,
that would be good too, cause then anyone can look at what their bill would be.
okay. Okay, thank you.
Alright, so Thursday the 15th at 11 o'clock.
Sandy.
Can
Sandra.
I just add that the proposed sewer rates, now that you have agreed and voted on it, now, that will go up on our website as well.
Okay.
So there will be a URL in the legal ad so that people can go to the website and look at,
okay.
and if we want to,
Yeah.
if you want to put the other scenarios and, you know, the board is supporting this, but these are the other scenarios, we could put it there,
Yeah,
or we
I'm
could
not-
not, whichever, you
I'm
know.
not sure if we should or shouldn't.
I know,
Just, you know, it's, don't
And it's
know.
not any, you know, we want everyone
Right.
to,
Mhm.
you know, I mean, we
Right.
encourage the participation,
Yeah.
you
And
know.
especially where it's kind of a compromise first fair attempt, you know, it's not based on a lot of data.
I have no
so-
problem putting all the scenarios up there. I mean, this is what we're
Yeah.
looking, I mean,
Yeah.
I think it shows due diligence. I mean, we're
Right.
looking at every possible,
Yeah.
I mean, for waterways, we looked at, what, 11? I mean,
Yeah.
it's not like we just came up with a number out of thin air. Well, you put a lot of time and work into it. So I mean, put all the scenarios up there. This is one that we chose, this is what we're going with. That way, if people do come to the meeting, they say, well, why did you pick C and not A? Well, this is why. You know, I mean,
Yeah,
And is
I-
it a
yeah,
town
the
hall
other
or
thing-
here?
it'll be here, 'cause
Here.
we'll have the camera on the road.
We have the audio for today too, so I
Right.
mean,
Okay,
But we'll be
yeah.
live on TV showing Alex.
Yeah, the thing of it is that when you have no history to
Right,
work from,
right.
makes it even more difficult.
That's right.
And you can shoot any number, but, you know, there's some fairness into at least attempting the right way.
Sandy?
Now, we've added a wastewater menu on the water department website, so all of our menus are all water, you know, conservation, everything that anyone could be looking for. But we've added a menu now that's just wastewater, and it has like the phase 2 map, the phase 2 street listing, a link to the CWMP. We found that, and I only put it there, Dan was on vacation, but it was like, we got a handful of calls, and it was like, okay, I didn't have the map ready,
Right.
available, and I was trying to help, you know, to just like, are you on this, I went to the street listing, yes, you are in that area. So if you can think of any questions or people are approaching you and that we could add to that to sort of like answer questions and help to direct people to find the answers themselves, we can build it.
You know, I was part of the group that redesigned the old
Mhm.
wastewater website and made it more understandable, because
Mhm.
all government forms all sound alike, all reports. But I'd be happy to look at the two, because I looked at it recently and
Okay.
see if there's any stuff from there that could be moved to water that would be, you know, that is an ancient history.
Are you referring to the town's water implementation committee website?
I think it says wastewater support now.
Okay,
Yeah,
because that's where some of the things
Right.
I've linked.
it's the
So
one
I don't-
A through F it had.
Yes,
Yeah.
and there's so much
I know.
information
We redesigned
historically.
that,
I know, and
yeah.
it's hard to.
I'll give Sharon
manage that
Flager, I'll give
webpage?
Sharon Flager
Yeah.
a kudo for that. She worked the hardest on it, and that was from stuff back from even Alan's time, you know, to try to get it all consolidated.
Way back then?
Yeah.
One of the
That
items
long ago?
is the wastewater history. So the wastewater
is
history
so
links
long
over to that page which
Okay.
you can see everything.
Yeah, I'll look
I
at my
will.
up
Yeah,
there and
let
talk
me
to
know.
you about it.
Just-
Yeah.
The gearbox is wearing out.
Think we're good?
It's in black and white though, Alan's sections.
Jesus.
Alan's sections are in black and white though, not color.
It's in block letters. A motion to adjourn.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
All in favor?
Aye.
Do we need a second?
I backed you. I backed you. I think I seconded it.